promo, because why not? Oh, hey, people can see us. Let's start the show properly, shall we? Let's get really metal now.
I had a dream.
Hashem told you to dance in a tango contest?
A dancing teacher wants to tango with you?
Critics are raving about Tango Shalom. It's clever and inventive, with right chemistry on and off the dance floor.
You're a lunatic!
A funny and thoughtful family film with a warm heart and a playful spirit. From the director of My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, that's my Fernando.
Tango Shalom. In select theaters this weekend. Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and I'm feeling so metal tonight. I'm Robert Meyer Burnett, and by the way, for any of you who say, can we retire the all goof people thing, like someone said today, the answer to that is no. No, we are all goof people. Remember that. That's what we're here for. And you know what? It's not a show if I don't have a cohort. And tonight, I once again have with me. Are you feeling metal tonight?
Yes, Robert. It's midnight metal. It's midnight metal, Robert. Yes.
Yes, and you sound so good.
Thank you, Robert. So
I mean, wow, we've got our sound problems. Any problems alleviated? Now, I got to tell you, I had no real subjects for tonight. And said, why don't we talk about sex and eroticism in horror movies? Where that came from, I don't know, but I'm like, why yes, yes, we should. Sex and eroticism go with horror like death. So I think absolutely we should talk about that because, you know, sex and horror are the new gods, as Frankie Goes to Hollywood once sang. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big Frankie Goes to Hollywood fan. I'm a big Trevor Horn fan. His label's ZTT. I've got a lot of ZTT CDs, and I like them very, very, very much. So, yeah, I mean, now I got to ask you, do you have a favorite scene of sexuality in any specific horror film? Is there something when you think about sex and horror that jumps to mind?
Yeah. For me, it always has to be a situation where there's a character, it can be male or female, that is enjoying themselves sexually and it gets the unexpected thrill and or unfortunate demise after being sexual, either alone or watching someone or in a group, whatever the scenario is. It doesn't matter what the film is. If I see a sex scene and then there's a murder or a death or something right after that, I'm like, I'm giving it the thumbs up.
Now, okay, I'll bite. Why though? Why do you think that, dare I say it, why is it so titillating when you're combining sex and death?
Well, one of the things about it is that when a horror film does include a sex scene, and it can be a sex scene of a person by themselves, pleasing themselves, or with another person, or with a group, or watching someone else, anything like that, peering through a window, it kind of takes away, any kind of guilt involved a lot of times when you're watching it. And so I think that it creates a real life situation. Perhaps you're not going to get stabbed after having sex or masturbating or anything like that. But there is this associated kind of like not proud sense of being a sexual being. And in actuality, we think about sex all the time. So, it's like at some point you have to come to terms with the fact that perhaps every night or several hours during the day, you may think about having sex, but there's a certain level of pushback even within yourself. And so the horror film allows you to see that. And there are many reasons why it's being shown. It's not just because, of course, you're going to get some pleasure from seeing it, but there are also reasons inherently within the film why it's being placed in there. So, for me, just even getting that gratifying look at it, it spurs a lot of fantasies that you can use for yourself later on, or wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen a horror film and I'm like, I want to do that, or I kind of want to recreate that scenario. But I think that it's a great precursor to thinking about, enjoying your own sexuality.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, I think one of the great appeals of horror is that it's transgressive. And it's not just transgressive in a I think the best horror films are transgressive in many different ways. And I was a big fan growing up of early Cronenberg body horror. And the first Cronenberg feature film, not as student films, but the first feature film he made was called Shivers, or it was called They Came From Within here in America. But basically the plot of that movie was a doctor who was trying to figure out a way to make organ transplants. He created a parasite that was supposed to go into the human body and would replace whatever organ was failing and would be able to adapt and sort of turn into that organ. But instead, the parasites didn't work out that way, and his experimental parasites, which look like phalluses, would go into your body and start pumping this aphrodisiac into your system, and it would turn you into this person that was just after carnal delights. And this disease, this parasite spread in this apartment complex and turned everybody into sex zombies. And when I saw that, it made a huge impression, because I was a dirty little kid. As John Campy says, bring on the filthy. And I think it came from watching Star Trek, because there was all these beautiful women, and I prefer women that were curvaceous, the European women in 60s movies were like, that was my jam. And that carried over to and it still is, and that carried over to Star Trek, but carried over to all of my interests. And a lot of horror, especially in the 60s with Hammer and into the 70s, had a lot of sexuality in it. You had like Daughters of Darkness, you had lesbian vampires, Jean Rollins movies, you had like the Karnstein trilogy that Hammer made, Lust for a Vampire, Twins of Evil, and The Vampire Lovers. Those are not in order. I just messed up the order of those films, but okay. It was great because those films you had lesbianism, which was always great, always welcome, and then you had beautiful women, lots of breasts, and who doesn't like breasts, and killing and bloodletting and vampires and seducing and all of that, and that's, I think, part of the appeal of horror. And then as horror moved into like the slasher genre, you had teenagers that were getting punished for their sexual behavior. Halloween, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th opens with two camp counselors who was stolen off together, and they're getting it on, and then of course they get killed by Jason Voorhees, wink wink, or maybe not, but they still get killed at the beginning of that movie and back in the 50s. And I think that horror is inextricably linked to sexuality, because usually horror deals with death, but also the act that gives life is as much a part of that, as anything. And I think in a way, there's very little eroticism left in modern horror films, which I find odd. I mean, I guess now that you can go on to Pornhub or YouPorn or whatever your favorite porn site is and just watch whatever you want and see pornography, we've lost, we've talked about this before, but we've lost eroticism. And I think that the whole gothic milieu of the Hammer films, there's just something inherently erotic about all of it. And vampire mythology in general was all about seduction, and that was all the way back to Lugosi and Dracula. Nosferatu. I mean, Nosferatu was more of an inhuman creature in the 20s, but I've always loved that. I've always loved the vampire genre. I mean, one of my favorite sex scenes in any movie is in The Hunger, where Susan Sarandon is seduced by Catherine Deneuve, and Locke May is playing this great classical music piece, and it's a love song. I told you, it's sung between two women. It sounds like a love song. Yeah, it is, baby. And that scene's incredible. It's totally erotic, and yet also it's a seduction. It's a vampire seducing a human because they want this vampire, Marion Blaylock, wants a concubine. She doesn't want to be lonely. She can't deal with it, so she takes lovers, for male and female, for a couple hundred years until they are used up and they age rapidly, and she puts them in wooden boxes in her attic where they're never really dead. But I mean, I've always liked that about the horror genre. And
Yeah.
But it brings up a larger question to me, like,
Yes.
Human sexuality itself. Like, you have the act of procreation, and then there's human sexuality, and they use the same tools, but the act is very, very different. Like, procreation is very different than sexuality, and I think sexuality involves imagination, and it involves actually most of it involves imagination and then biological yearnings, but combined with creativity. I mean, that's where the whole imagination, and you're conjuring up images of scenarios. And I've always thought that the great thing about sexuality, especially for people that are in touch with their sexuality, is usually it's pretty creative. It's a creative, imaginative impulse because so much of it is in your mind. You're anticipating things and things you want to have happen, or if you incorporate a lot of fantasy play into your sexuality or whatever it is. It's fascinating because to me it's all very creative, and you have the extra added bonus of it being very physically pleasurable. So you're combining the physical with the imaginative into some frothy mix of delight, so to speak.
Yeah, those are all excellent points, and I think that what we have witnessed, let's say, while it's true that we have seen eroticism decline in many genres, I think that as that's been occurring, I think that the acceptance as horror as an equally serious genre compared to other types of film genre has slowly been happening. And as a result of that, directors and screenplay writers are able to address other issues in horror, using sex as a way to show relationships and connections. For example, we all do want to see sex without procreation. And I'm not saying that procreation is a bad thing, but we all desire to see that. And so, by putting it in these films, we get that part satisfied. And perhaps that's something that's, is really essential. You talked earlier about how love is needed in a story. You need some sort of love or some sort of love interest. Even the innuendo of love is important. And we've even seen that in some films where it was implied, but nothing happened. So we at least had that satisfaction that was there, that element was there. So sometimes we do need to see people enjoying sex without procreation taking place, because that puts the sex in another realm altogether. Trying to, create a family is a little different. So when you can enjoy something that is so inherent in your human spirit, it also creates a satisfying feeling inside of you, and you're able to kind of look at the story from another point of view. So we all want to see it, and I kind of think that what's also kind of interesting is that the sexuality and eroticism in horror allows us to build characters in a different way than we normally would. And so if for example, and I'm not talking about, bisexuality or, a homosexuality versus heterosexuality. I'm simply saying that, when you have characters that are engaging in sex either with themselves or with multiple partners, we end up in a situation where you can classify individuals and define them as in different power struggles. also an experience, a sexual experience that a person has by themselves can be inherently just different when they involve another partner. You know, you mentioned the hunger, and it sets a different feeling to it. You know, yes, it would be nice to see Susan Sarandon or any beautiful woman or man pleasuring themselves, but then there's a shift in the direction of the film when you see them with a particular character, and all of a sudden there's this revelation of maybe there's some sort of union between the two of them, or something has happened between them. And how's that going to affect the horror film? Maybe it does affect the horror film. We've seen situations where it can be a revenge film because they witnessed something and they saw that between two people, or, you know, it misinterpreted it. And now all of a sudden you're going into a much deeper story that has a deeper meaning, not just for the characters on the screen, but also for the viewers watching it.
No, I look, I agree with all that. I find the whole idea of, like, I always use this as an example, but I think back to Clive Barker's original Hellraiser in '87, and in it, Andrew Robinson's brother Frank Cotton, he's a guy that is a complete, just a real asshole, and he fancies himself somebody who's exploring the limits of human experience, and he's completely bored by everything, and he even starts banging his brother's wife, and it all bores him. You know, he's bored by there's nothing in a human experience that turns him on anymore. And so what he actually does is he acquires the lament configuration, because he's like, well, I've heard that maybe I can open a doorway to hell and I'll see what happens, because everything else is so boring on Earth. And of course he does that, and the Cenobites arrive, and as they do, they tear his soul apart. And what's really interesting, what I always loved, I mean, first of all, no one combines horror and sexuality like Clive Barker does. Yes. And Clive Barker's depictions of sexuality and horror are some of the most strange and extreme things. I mean, obviously, Clive Barker himself is gay, and he talks about his early life. He's spoken about this openly, as he was a hustler, a gay hustler on the streets, and a lot of his, like, he wrote one of my favorite horror short stories I've ever read called "In the Hills, the Cities," which is basically about these two male lovers, that they end up seeing this in this town. These people come together, and the people themselves form these giant human these human visages, but all the people make up the bodies of these things, and they work as, I mean, they're all held, they're holding their hands together, and it's just bizarre. And it's a great story. But I mean, I think Clive Barker's sexuality plays so much into his horror. So what I loved about Hellraiser is, you know, the Cenobites don't show up and just torture you, or you have to call them. You know, you have to summon them by, first of all, you have to find the lament configuration, even open up the Rubik's Cube to hell, and then they come, and of course, as people they never think it all through. They're taken away by their desire, and they just need to satiate. You know, and I think as a metaphor, in terms of sexuality, like, you know, when you have desire for somebody, you can't. You're not thinking, like, maybe you're in a marriage and you have an affair with somebody, and you break into it because you can't stay away from this person. There's that attraction. There's just something about them, and it's, you don't want to hurt anybody, and it's overpowering. It's an urge that it's that combination of your imagination and your biological urges that come together in an irresistible. It's really difficult to sometimes resist that impulse, and in Hellraiser, that impulse it shows what happens when you give in to that without thought of, well, you know, I never really thought about it once I opened a doorway to hell, and the Cenobites, I never really put it, you know, and so Frank Cotton now is in a position where he has to escape from hell, you know, and he gets Julia, his brother's wife, that she had the best fuck of her life from him, And so what if he's been in hell and all he needs is real people and consuming their blood, and she's like helping him get people. He's up in the attic, and when enough blood, he gets to reconstitute himself. And
that mattress.
yeah, and then of course she wants that feeling back. She wants to be, and I think what's really interesting about human sexuality, it's the closest we can come as people to it's not just physically touching another person, but we can't ever get into one another's heads. Like, we'll never know what each of us are thinking at any one time. Somebody can tell you what they're thinking, but it's not the same as, we can physically put ourselves, or men can put themselves in women, or actually women can enter men in various ways, but we can't know what we're thinking.
Right.
As close as we can get, we can't really, I'll never know what a partner's thoughts are at the time, and what they're really thinking. And I think that's the great frustrating thing about human existence, is that we can't touch one another intellectually or on a like ESP or spiritual or whatever level. We can get close, but we can never quite get there. And I think sexuality, especially when you're compatible with somebody and you can share your fantasies or whatever, that's the closest we're ever going to come. But I think horror, which is usually so preoccupied with death, and to me, horror is not about dying. Horror is about having to live another day in a world where these things exist. Knowing the kind of horrors that human beings can perpetrate against one another. All horror movies and all horror stories are derived from what human beings do to each other in real life. The horrible tortures, whether it's the witch trials or the Inquisition, or what human beings have done to one another, is far more monstrous than in any horror story I've ever come across. Whenever you read a story where even the devil is in it, the devil's a lot more moral than we have been over the centuries to one another. And I think that sexuality is the flip side of that. In a way, playing with that, the life force becomes as much a part of horror as death. So you need it. Vampires crave life. They're the undead, and seducing women, it's like, or men if you're a female, or maybe you're a gay vampire, whatever your jam is. That's the funny thing to me, that I've always thought it was odd that there are people. See, the thing is, once you start talking about sexuality, to me, procreation is one thing. Mm-hmm. And like biblical, that people talk about things that are, everything to do with human sexuality is unnatural. It's all bizarre and strange. So there's no reason to dislike, say, homosexual sex, because that's just as weird as heterosexual sex.
I love homosexual sex.
Well, it's completely removed from the act of procreation. So any sexuality, and in a way, to me, I had a lot of gay friends from an early age, and I always thought what I liked about them is I liked the fact that a lot of the gay men I knew had wanton sexuality in them. They were perfect specimens of men because they kept their bodies in shape, and that physical pleasuring was something that they were able to they discriminately sought it out, and it was a part of a lot of their personalities, and I admired that. I'm like, man, I always have to worry about people's feelings and all that, where you guys can go out and just you see it, and it's just a different vibe. And to me, I was always like, you go, boys, and I liked that. And I thought that's why I've never really understood. I get it. You talk about things unnatural, but any human sexuality is unnatural. Once you remove it from the act of procreation, it's all weird. Just the idea of what we like to do sexually is bizarre if you really think about it, but awesome. And yet it's such a part of the power, because the idea of the darkness seducing you, it's all a metaphor. Whether you're physically or sexually seduced by evil, that's a biblical metaphor for being corrupted by all of our passions, or greed, or avarice, the 7 deadly sins, whatever it is that's going to subsume your personality and lead you down the dark path. It's all about seduction, and whether it's mental or physical or sexual, it's that evil seducing you is as much a part of horror as anything else. That's why I think sexuality and horror go so well together.
Yeah, and speaking of Hellraiser, nowhere else is body horror and sex more, intertwined in a film that I've ever seen. And even in the worst sections of the body horror of that film, I'm always thinking, are they going to have sex while this person is sort of with chains and whips and stuff on them? I think it's very interesting the implication of it, and how perhaps that character is not an example of the typical desires. Maybe he went a little too far, but it was an exploration that he had to go on as a character. And I think that what's interesting about it is that it forced us to look at different sexual desires, different levels of pushing the limits. And we can see in his example, maybe it's the worst case scenario, but is it the worst case scenario for him? Yes, he pulls back. He does. But this is a telling tale that this is what he wanted. He wanted to push the limits.
Right.
He wanted to do these extraordinary things sexually. And I think that showing an example of, let's say, well, was his outcome. These might have been some of his deepest desires all along. And I kind of am looking at horror from the perspective of, is this an element? Is the horror element part of a desire that the main character had all along? In some cases, we see that is the case. And perhaps it was the case in Hellraiser, but I have to say that we saw some of the most interesting and intriguing horror scenes in it, and it feels almost as if he was not ever going to escape his fate, because it was this thing that happened in a home. Like, your home is your safe place,
right?
And horror films use home invasion or things that happen at home as a way to kind of break apart your sense of security, And I think that was a very important way of showing that, it's like, even in your own home, this is happening.
Yeah.
But I think that to explore it, the sexuality part of him as well. You made an analogy to people maybe sort of like having an affair or going off on a tangent that they wouldn't normally go on. I just loved what they did in it, because it still came off as being and feeling very sexual. I even feel that way about it now. I'm scared of Hellraiser, but I still feel the sexual pull of the film. It has a sexual pull and a horror pull, and it's amazing to accomplish both of those in the film. And the other thing too, when we were talking about, partners and having different partners, and, not being able to understand what someone may be thinking. And it is true, we cannot read minds, but we can certainly pick up signals sexually from a person.
Oh, yeah.
The signal can be picked up with a look, a glance, and we like to see these things. We like to see them. And I think a lot of times, we can pick up on little nuances, that, did you see the way he looked at her, or she looked at him, or that woman? We can see those nuances and pick up and say, there's something else going on here. And it's very satisfying to witness that, especially in a horror film, because we already know that there are things that are being unsaid in a horror film that feed into the story, that make the story more legitimate, especially for, like, from your point of view as, let's say, a director or a screenplay writer or whatever. There's definitely hidden messages and subtleties that need to come across to actually bolster the seriousness of the film. There are some directors who will talk about their work and will say, my film has a very serious message, and it's not entirely apparent, by reading a byline on the film or kind of like getting word of mouth. The director has a vision for these films, and oftentimes using sex in horror can help him to create the scenario that makes the film believable and gives the message that he wants to, he or she wants to give off. So I think it's very interesting looking at that as well from that point of view.
No, I mean, absolutely. But also another thing that horror does is when it perverts sexuality, and it perverts the idea of procreation. Like, even though it's presented in a dream sequence, I've always found it very horrifying, where the dream sequence in Rosemary's Baby, where it's done in a very surreal way, but literally Satan himself comes up and impregnates Rosemary Woodhouse while her husband stands by idly and watches, while the whole coven watches the Lord of Darkness take her. And that there's something it's both. I mean, it's perverted from a procreation standpoint. It's perverted that people are watching this desecration, the defilement of poor little Rosemary, and it's truly horrifying. But it's also presented in this sort of dreamy, surreal. So did it happen? Was it real? I mean, the film ultimately says yes, it was, and all of these people are complicit. They're literally standing by. They've conjured up. They're disciples of Satan, and they want Satan alive on Earth. They want to begin Satan's reign on the planet, and they succeed. You know, and in Rosemary's Baby, they win, and you don't. I know they made a terrible sequel to it later, a TV movie, but whatever happened to Rosemary's Baby? But Rosemary's Baby is one of my not just one of my favorite horror movies, but one of my favorite movies, and you know that and then a woman, her pregnancy, which should be such a joyous thing, becomes a nightmare for Rosemary because she's being poisoned, and they have to give the child of Satan what it needs to thrive and grow in the womb, and it's killing her, and then everyone around her has sold her out, you know, and the idea is maybe it's just prepartum paranoia or whatever, but it's such a monstrous movie, and I love it so much for that reason. But it really, I mean, it just perverts the idea of because that's what I love about it so much, is that it completely defiles and desecrates everything that we hold holy or valuable, and especially the idea of motherhood, which there's a sanctity in motherhood, even if your child is the son of Satan. And I just love it. I mean, to me, it's one of my favorite. I consider it a horror movie. A lot of people, that movie's boring. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's a fantastic film, but it's very disturbing in that way, in that it robs her of her sexuality. Because he won't even touch her anymore. Like once you've watched the devil rape your wife, your sexual desire is going to ebb for her, and man, that movie's got a lot going on.
Well, that's another good point. I mean, even, you know, if it's killed the sexual desire in the husband, you know, and that's usually the end of a lot of times the end of a relationship, you know. So not only did it stop that intimacy between them, but now all of a sudden, you know, to suddenly go or witness something that's so dramatic that you've completely lost interest in being intimate with a partner that you've committed to, I think is very terrifying, because no one wants to think that there can ever be sort of like one event that would cause that. But we've been seeing things like this, let's say over a period of years, but an unconsented event that has happened, you know, there's a stigma of that type of event happening to you. There's a stigma of the exorcism. There's the stigma of being associated with an entity in that manner. And the fact that it was combined in a sexual act is even more disturbing, as you said. But, you know, it was an incredibly popular film. And I think that, you know, it could be a metaphor for a lot of things. It could be a metaphor for looking at, you know, that time period that it was made in, and the expectations of, you know, even the family unit, you know, and perhaps even, you know, the rise of key parties, you know, all different sorts of implications that could be coming from that, you know, I think are very interesting and perhaps very valid, especially for that generation, which we're not part of, but, you know, like, let's say our parents' generation who went through all those changes. How did they deal with such dramatic changes during that decade, where at the beginning of the decade, you had one particular perception of what the world was like, and by the end it was completely different.
By the way, Kaz Graphics sent us a super chat sticker. Keep it up.
Thanks, Kaz Graphics.
I think he's kind of being funny. I'll keep it up, buddy.
I'm sure he is.
You know
I'm sure he is.
I'll keep it up. But no, and it's interesting because they talk about the fact that, like, teenagers now these days are having less sex than they used to.
Yes.
And I can't imagine what it's like to, you know, back in the day when you have your sexuality developing on a normal track, but to now have the internet and you're watching all of this pornography that is where you've got guys with the biggest dicks who look the best and these beautiful women that'll do all these service you in any way you want. I mean, and make. I would have incredible. If I was 15 years old, I have incredible performance anxiety on many different levels, because how are you if you've never done it before and you're watching all these quote unquote experts all the time? It's like, is that what it's supposed to be? That looks like you have to be an Olympic athlete in order to perform that well. Where it was those stumbling, fumbling. What did Hannibal Lecter say? In those fumblings in the back seats of cars or something. He's saying that to Clarice Starling and in Silence of the Lambs. I mean, we all had that.
Windows.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you need to learn. You have to, and that's what was great. I love that. Back in the day, you'd make out with a girl and it took you 3 hours just to touch her boobs. And and you'd realize, oh, her parents are coming home now. I'm like, how did 3 hours pass by in the blink of an eye? Time has never moved faster than when you're a teenager making out with your girlfriend or boyfriend, I guess, or whatever. Because time bends. It was like there's something going on with the space-time continuum when you're a teenager and you finally start making out with your significant other. And you slowly are working your way up or down or wherever the hell you want to get to. Time just moves much faster. And
it does.
It does. And, when you get older and people are all down with it, they're all like, okay, why don't you come up to my room? then it's different. But I liked it better when I was a kid. You could, time was, no, it's but it's weird. Like nowadays, I think that the loss of eroticism and you go straight to the main event is really detrimental. It's like everything else. I mean, I think that our society has been so affected because the journey has been removed. Everybody wants to be at the destination. It's like, but wait a minute, it's a journey. Like everybody wants everything. Like whether you're talking about, well, we have to have representation everywhere. I'm like, okay, but we were on that path already. We were our culture was on that path already, and in the last couple of years, everybody wants to like suddenly live in this perfect civilization. I had somebody write and they objected to the fact that I'm staunchly anti-communist and I'm an anti-collectivist, and they were defending communism and Marxism or communism on the page, and I couldn't help but think, have you lived in a communist society? And the thing is, nowadays people who are espousing Marxism and Marxist ideals, whether it's academia or whatever, they've never actually lived in a Marxist society, and they all say the same thing. It just hasn't been done right yet.
Well, sure. It's interesting to see that, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about the idea of using sex to entrap characters in horror. And we've seen a lot of different varieties of this, and one of the ones that was most enjoyable to me was Hostel, because it lives on this fantasy.
I just love that you said that. Most enjoyable to me was Hostel.
Well,
it's fantastic.
Well, the reason why is because it's a fantasy, isn't it? You go on this trip. You're a young person. Young, healthy. It was young men, but let's say even a young woman. You go on this trip overseas. No one's ever going to know what you're doing over there because it stays over there.
Yeah.
And, like any sort of association with what might happen or what you've done, no one will ever find out, especially, let's say, at that time period. Maybe it's a little different today where people are filming everything. But, there was a time where you could go to some place and, no one would ever know what happened when you were over there. And so,
you didn't even have to go to Europe. You could just go out on a Saturday night in L.A.
You could go out on a Saturday night in L.A. or New York.
One knew. Yeah, or New York.
And no one would know. You wake up the next week and it's a new week. You're still you.
Yep.
And, these young guys, thought they were going to go over there. They didn't imply that this is what they were looking for. But, come on. We knew that they were hoping.
You're looking for girls. I mean.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, I have to say, my first night in Europe was incredibly memorable. It was an incredibly memorable night, despite my best efforts to thwart my own night. I was trying to be like, I was trying to be Mr. Polite, and I'm a filmmaker. I'm in Europe representing my film, and I just kept, and then finally I just gave in. I couldn't believe what was happening. It was an amazing evening, that I don't know if I've told this story before on the show, but there's another lesson to be learned here. But I learned a very important lesson on that night. It had nothing to do with horror, but the idea that night that I was having, it was not Hostel hadn't come out then, but it was not it was not in the back of my mind like, is this really this good? Or am I being taken? Am I gonna wind up in my bathtub in ice and missing a kidney? I mean, that was something that was on my mind, because I'm like, come on. I just didn't understand. I'm in Europe, and and Europeans have thousands of years more. They have thousands of more years of being human beings than we do. So there's certain things they're much more comfortable with than say we are. And I just, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay,
yeah.
But
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I still was thinking, someone's gonna pull out a hypodermic needle. I'm gonna be drugged. I'm gonna wake up on the beach. Because any genre fan thinks that way.
Yes.
I fell into a trap, the easiest trap a guy can fall into, when a pretty girl's like, hey, why don't we go to your room and have some drinks? Okay, sure.
And
Cut
she's
to,
pouring, so you
I'm
don't know
less-
what's in that drink.
Yeah, I'm less a kidney. It was. But that yes, but Hostel was sort of like the first Hostel. These guys meet these really beautiful women. Hey, come with us. You're like,
That's
great, fantastic. I'm gonna go with you. Of course, why wouldn't I? What beautiful girls? What bad? Because of course, all guys, when you meet beautiful girls and they like come with us, you think that, oh, they're so into me. Like, you never stop and think, you're like, I'm gonna go, especially when you're in Europe, because there's something about when you're in Europe, girls seem better.
Okay.
It's a perception, because it's the accents, it's where you met them, and your guard
It's
is
a new
down.
experience, Robert.
Yes.
It's the potential for a new sexual experience.
Or just a new experience, and you just don't know where. And to be honest, it is, life is just different in Europe than it is in the United States.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So there's a whole different vibe that goes along with that, and yet, I mean, now in the wake of Hostel and Hostel 2 and 3, if I met girls if I was in Europe now and girls were asking me to go to a party, I'm like, fuck no, man, I'm not going with you.
I mean,
But
honestly,
back in the day, when I was in Spain for the first time in 1998, it was all good.
yeah. Yeah, and I was in Europe in the 90s as well, several times, and it was safe. Like, it was safe. We had a good time. There wasn't the notion of that fear that I'm not blaming, the creators of Hostel or anything. I love that film. I think it's a great film, great series. So just to be clear, but I like the lore of it, how they, managed to throw that in, and it's fun to watch, because you want these young men to succeed. You want them to find
especially
pleasure.
with those girls.
Yes.
I mean, it's like,
you want them to be satisfied. Like, the boys are almost giggling to themselves like teenagers. And obviously they're over 18, but it's almost as if they're like, they can't believe this is happening. And of course it is. It's not that it's too good to be true. It's just that they're in a bad place. But I think that the fulfillment, the satisfaction you get from them getting what they want is what makes the film even more appealing. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, and then how wrong it goes makes it fun.
Yes, and that,
and it goes, and that's one of the things I even liked. I think I might have even liked Hostel 2 more than Hostel 1, because the fact that you get into the heads of the people that are the killers that want to, and the great thing about Hostel is, I believe it. I am sure that something very similar to that has actually happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. And, some poor guys have escaped, and, kind of just gotten out of there in the nick of time, and guy and or a girl, I don't think that these, unfortunately this crime syndicate, so to speak, discriminates either way. So, in this particular case, they had these young, attractive American boys, And then, I'm sure if the roles were reversed and it was, young, attractive American girls or whatever, whoever it is, they would adjust to, what they were dealing with. And so that also is an intriguing thought, because I somehow don't think that they would say, "Oh, there's only women tonight. Great, let's get it. Let's get one of them." Like. I think that it was, maybe it actually appeals to us, Robert, because of our comfortableness of going over there in the 90s, of having experiences over there in the 90s, and just I still feel very comfortable in Europe. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, that particular situation, is really no reflection on a hostel itself, which I've never actually stayed at a hostel.
Me neither.
Okay. But there are a lot of people, even, like all different ages, that stay at hostels, whole families, and that's just normal. And, that's okay. So, so to associate this with this, like the hostel almost represents the freedom of being able to stay wherever you want, maybe even do whatever you want with whomever you want. And, being able to kind of walk away grinning to yourself. So, it's a success. I think that approach of defining, this sexual desire, and then, an unfortunate experience that happens afterwards. But boy, that sexual desire is strong, and it's the driver of the film. It drives the film. And I think that it was brilliant. So, I think when we see those sorts of entrapment films where sexual desire is used to entrap somebody, it's very interesting.
No, I mean, I
horror film.
Yeah, I love that. Well, what I also love about that is that those girls were employed by this company to do that. Like they were, they agree. They're like, we know what's going on, and they're probably paying us handsomely, so why not? Like,
she actually did say that in one of the scenes. She's like, "I got a lot of money for you,"
right,
to one of the boys, and the boy's like, "What?" Like he couldn't believe it. But she was very boastful about the fact that she got a lot of change, a lot of bank.
Well, that's the horror. That's part of the horror of the whole movie, that the human lives are completely commodified. They're completely reduced to. And again, my greatest fear is the loss of civility. The idea that human lives and human experience is worthless, and we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen throughout the 20th century, where people are completely they're dehumanized and rendered valueless. We certainly saw it. 12 million people, not just 6 million Jews, but 6 million other people were killed by Nazis in basically in a mechanized slaughter machine that was designed to transport and exterminate human beings. I mean, there's nothing more monstrous than that. And then the experiments, or you look at what the Japanese did to the Chinese, not just during the rape of Nanking, but the human experiments that the what was it? Was it 731, the group that was that it horrible? Like, human beings have already done the most awful things to other human beings in real life. All horror can do is remind us of how awful we can be. And I think that the Hostel movies are, people talk about like how Saw and Hostel, they celebrated torture porn, but to me, it's not so much torture porn as it delves into the same dark human impulses that what is mankind capable of doing, as opposed to, say, like I remember in the early 80s we had a lot of movies like Cat People, which celebrated sexuality, like you had to have sex before you could revert back, or if you had sex you were going to undergo this change. And then you had, of course, the werewolf movies that were coming out. There were 3 that came out in the early 80s. There was Wolfen, which wasn't really a werewolf movie, but you had Wolfen, American Werewolf, and The Howling. And The Howling, you had like Elizabeth Brooks, who was this incredibly just beautiful woman, and there's werewolf sex, in a campfire in the woods, and I remember she became, if you were a Fangoria reader, suddenly she was everywhere. And then there was like Sybil Danning in The Howling 2, and they would combine sex and because werewolves, that whole idea that, and if you had a female and a male werewolf together, I mean, one of my favorite horror novels that I've read in the last 20 years, which I cannot believe has not been turned into a movie, is Glenn Duncan's book, The Last Werewolf, which is now a trilogy. I basically combined werewolves and James Bond and international intrigue and Europe, and Ridley Scott's company bought the rights to it. But of course, I don't know why it hasn't gotten made, but it's such a, it's an irresistible. I mean, it should be a series. They should make all 3 of those books. They should do it as a Netflix limited series or something on HBO, because it's fucking great. So if anyone's interested, if you like werewolves, read The Last Werewolf by Glenn Duncan, then read Tallulah Rising, and I forget the third book's called, but they're fantastic. And that was another thing, you know, combining American Werewolf in London has that great, you know, Jenny Agutter finds him, brings him home. He's a werewolf, but of course they get it on in the shower to moon dance, and it's great. You know, and the werewolf of all mythologies, I mean, werewolves, they're not undead. You know, they're people, so they can act as people do. And I mean, I wouldn't mind being a werewolf. You know, there's a lot of people that I could survive on. You know, there's once a month you've got to kill. That'd be fine. Full moon. I mean, I'd take care of to make sure that people who deserved it served my needs.
In Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder, there's a scene where when Mina has sex with what I thought was supposed to be the vampire, but it clearly looks like a werewolf. Like, it looks like a, right? Like, am I wrong?
Well, no, there is an awesome looking werewolf creature in that. No, I mean, that movie's got some great sex in it.
Yeah, and so you know, that was something that kind of confused me a little bit, because I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be one of the characters, but it looks like a werewolf.
Right.
And so you know, and it's a very sexual scene, and it's not, this is a very interesting too element of, I guess maybe for horror, is when you can't determine necessarily whether the sex is consensual.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, you know, like perhaps in the lore or in the book or somewhere else it says Mina has, you know, now become, you know, something different and she's consenting. You know, we can't really tell. And it's very interesting to observe it and enjoy watching it and realizing that, gee, this may not be what we're even witnessing or even understanding the transformation, but sex is being used to convey that message of, wow, this is going in a completely different direction. And, you know, what are they exploring here? So I thought that was a very interesting choice to use a werewolf looking type character.
Yeah.
In that particular sex scene. You know, I don't know what else they would have used. I don't know how else he would have configured himself, but the werewolf was used on purpose. Mm-hmm. You know, like sort of little Red Riding Hood implication of it all. With Mina, who, you know, is obviously a very seductive and sexual girl even before all this stuff happens.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I think, you know, that I wouldn't say it's a werewolf. I think it's more of a, like, he's taking different forms.
Oh, okay.
You know,
okay.
So it just because I think Greg Canham did those. There's some great creature designs in that movie, but you know, we've seen. I mean, look, all vampire movies have great seduction scenes for the most part in them.
Yes.
You know, one of my favorite vampire movies is Near Dark, and near Jenny Wright, who plays Jenny Wright. What happened to Jenny Wright, man? I mean, she was in like the Chocolate War, but I don't think there's ever been like. Jenny Wright in Near Dark is one of the most smolderingly sexual. Her performance in that is kind of like this out of time, ethereal baby doll, vampire, seductress. I mean, it doesn't get much better than like when Caleb's like, I've never met a girl like you before, and she's like, no, you've never met a girl like me before. I'm like, oh, I love that shit. I mean, I'm just like, I watch that movie and I'm like, oh my God. With that Tangerine Dream score, and they meet, the way she walks out the door and looks in the night. The night, can you hear the night? It's so deafening. It's such a great, like, And if the funny thing about that movie kicks ass, and it's kind of forgotten because it came out in the Lost Boys came out right after that, and a lot of people like Near Dark didn't do a lot of box office, but to me, Near Dark is one of the coolest vampire movies ever made. You have half the cast of Aliens in it.
Yes.
Hey,
I think
Jesse,
it's
how old are
Paxton
you?
and Harrison.
Lance Henriksen. My favorite. I love when Caleb, when he says, "I've been meaning to ask you, Jesse, how old are you?" And he says, "Let me put it to you this way: I fought for the South. We lost." I mean, it's just it's so great. It's so great. And then there's a little kid vampire that's right out of Interview with Vampire, Anne Rice.
Right.
People always mispronounce his name. And he's like, mispronounce it, and I wouldn't want to be you. I mean, I love Near Dark, and it's kind of. I wish people would see more of it, but again, it almost is a Romeo and Juliet story, where you've got the vampire family, and then you've got the human family, the Montagues and the Capulets, these star-crossed vampire lovers. One of them, Caleb gets turned into a vampire, but he can't hack it. But Jenny Wright's carrying him. It's just, I miss all that. I miss horror movies now. They're like, we get a lot of great. I mean, have you seen Malignant?
I haven't finished watching it. I know yesterday you were asking me about it, and I've only seen half of the film. But what I've seen so far has been spectacular. I'm sorry I didn't watch the rest. Did you see it?
Yep.
And what did you think of it?
I loved it, but you gotta. What can I say about it?
Oh wow!
You need. I can't. You know what? Jerome, I
must. Don't spoil it for me.
I must. Let me just say, God bless James Wan.
Okay.
God bless him because it's very funny. So he made $1 billion with Aquaman. He probably could have made anything else he wanted to make. And I'm sure Warner Brothers said, "So James, what is it you'd like to do?" And he's got, "Well, I've got this idea for this movie I want to call Malignant." And then they were like, "Well, what's it about?" And he explains the whole plot. And I'm sure whoever's like, "Okay."
Is it a remake? Is it a remake?
No.
Okay.
No. It's totally original. You'll see. You'll see.
I'm about halfway through the film, and what I've seen, I love. And I just halfway through. Yesterday I was recommending it to people because it's just so enjoyable to watch. It's different. It pulls you in different directions.
Oh, it's different.
You have
all
different
right.
emotions.
Wait till you. Yeah.
You have different emotions. The beginning of the film actually affected me a great deal. And I liked that. So sometimes when a film breaks out and a theme in the story grabs your attention to where you're still thinking about it, I really like that. And that's rare. A lot of times it's not that films have a slow start. It's just that, maybe the element in the story doesn't grab your attention. But mine was immediately entranced by the notion of the scenario of this individual. I'm not going to say too much about it, but let's just say that the circumstances that she's in are very unique.
They are at that. Yes, and I love that. I do love that. Wait a minute, there's so many people writing in.
And what about your super chats from yesterday?
Yeah,
or
they were from last week. I'd have to find those.
Because I thought there were some from yesterday too, Rob. I could be wrong.
Oh, there could be. There was Richard K. Richard K. I don't know. I don't remember where we stopped, but Richard K. said, "Rob, could we get a fourth Friday fourth Friday movie? We have Friday, we have next Friday, and Friday after next. Could we get a fourth, maybe called The Last Friday, with Ice Cube, Mike Epps, and Chris Tucker all returning?" Well, Richard K., there's always a possibility. I think everyone likes the Friday movies. I know I do, so why not? Richard K. says, "Who will be the next Bond after Daniel Craig?" I'm hoping for Michael Fassbender or Luke Evans. I have to say, I think if they're going to get a new Bond, I like both Michael Fassbender and Luke Evans. I think that they're too old. They need a Bond. They need Bond. I mean, Daniel Craig started in 2006 was Casino Royale, and now it's 2021. And I think they would want somebody younger that can play Bond for a while. I mean, I know there's talk of, after seeing Bodyguard, Richard Madden, Rob Stark, and they're talking about him. There's a lot of people. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I love Fassbender. I love him.
I do too. I just think he's too old to play Bond now. I love him as an actor.
Yeah, I love him too.
He's great. People talk about Tom Hiddleston playing the next Bond, bringing the debonair back. He was in a movie. Did you see a movie called High Rise?
Yes, I love that film. And not only do I love the film, I listened to Tom Hiddleston read the book, like he did an audiobook of High Rise. That is one of my favorite films and one of my favorite audiobooks and actual book. Yes, I have seen it. Sorry.
That Ballard's book. I love that movie.
Love it.
I mean, I'm like, that's the kind of shit I grew up on. And when I saw it, I'm like, finally, J.G. Ballard, people are going back and doing those kinds of things. Thank God.
What was your interpretation of the film, Robert? Did you think it was a good adaptation of the book?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did think it was a good. The problem is a lot of the stuff that, like, Ballard also wrote Crash, that Cronenberg made.
Yes.
Talking about sex and horror and all that. But I mean, the idea of car crashes, being in a car crash where metal is penetrating your body is the ultimate sexual experience. Interesting. I mean, I think Ballard's ideas were very conceptual, and yet he, bringing them into the real world, and the idea of how high up you are in terms of in the building, and what your status, what that means as far as your status goes, might be a little on the nose now. I mean, I get when he wrote it quite some time ago, but I liked it. I mean, I thought that they did a pretty good job of that. I liked the way it was done. I had a lot of fun with that, and the director made Richard. It was Wheatley, right?
I don't remember.
And I think he made Kill List as well, the movie Kill List, which I really loved. But yeah, I liked it. I mean, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm in. I thought it was good. Because I like those crazy, weird, conceptual. We don't get much of those anymore because people don't get them. They don't understand. They're like, that's too out there. I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand what you're doing. And I'm like, no. And I'm sure you got it made because it was the guy who wrote Empire of the Sun wrote this book. Spielberg made Empire of the Sun. Of course, someone could have said, yeah, but didn't he also write Crash that Cronenberg made? No, he wrote Empire of the Sun. That's what I'm. So they got High Rise made. But I loved it for that reason, because I like that weird conceptual stuff. That's why I haven't seen New Order. I mean, I think New Order and High Rise would make a great double bill. I still haven't seen it.
God. I can't believe you haven't seen that.
I haven't seen New Order.
That's a great film that combines sexuality with horror. That's a great film that does that. And of course, in the story, there is unconsented sexual scenes in it. And
Would you mean rape?
The film is. Well, I didn't want to use the R word, but yes, because yes, I do mean that. And I think that they did a good job of presenting something that seems very real, Robert. It doesn't seem like a made-up story.
Right, yeah.
Like something that's happening in a country right now. That's what's so disturbing about it, especially after the riots that we had. But yes, there are unconsensual sex scenes in it, sexual assault, and they're not done in a petty way. Like, you see a lot of it, and it's traumatic. In addition to the physical assaults that you witness and killings and the animosity associated in the film, it is very, very strong. And I think that you have to leave that film thinking that there's anger here. There's anger here.
Yes.
And it's still there. Like, it's lingering even at the end of the film. So, as an undertone, lesson learned.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, for sure. I mean, again, to me, the fact that New Order got made, these are the kind of films I love. I love that and High Rise, that I grew up with those. I think that we're not getting. Did you see the Spanish film? I think it's called The Platform.
No,
and it was on Netflix. You should watch. I don't want to say anything more.
Yeah.
Watch if you have Netflix. Find the platform and watch it.
I will.
You will.
And there's another film that I wanted to mention by the same director of New Order called, I think it's called Daniel and Anna. And I think it was Alex Montano who recommended the film. And, you know, I hadn't seen the film, so I watched it because I liked New Order. You know, I like that sort of out of the box look at an event. And the film is about, it's actually very disturbing. The film is about the idea that it's going to be like a spoiler, but and I have no choice. But the film deals with what happens if you are riding in a car with someone you know, man or woman, and you get kidnapped, and you are forced to do certain things you don't want to do with them.
Wow. Okay.
Now, you know, in this particular case, I'm not going to say what it is, but that's what it's a film that involves forcibly making somebody do something that they don't want to do.
Brutal.
And it very much is. And I really don't want to spoil it for everybody. When was this film made? Like, it would be wrong to say what happens in it, right? Or would I?
I don't know. It's already out. So.
Okay. So in the film, what happens is it's a brother and sister. He's like maybe 16. He can't be more than 16 years old. And he's there with his sister. He's very close to her. She's about to get married. She's engaged. And the story takes place in Mexico or in South. So forgive me. I believe it's Mexico. But, and they're, you know, a nice family, and she's about to get married, and her fiance's kind of like saying, you know, I got this spot in Spain. I a new position, and it's a huge thing. And she's like, I don't want to leave my family. I kind of love being here in Mexico. So they are driving, and they kind of take a wrong turn down the street, and they get abducted, and they get, you know, like hoods over the head, you know, driven to someplace in town. They're told to take all their clothes off, and they're forced to have sex with each other, and it's filmed.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's devastating. Like, it's a devastating thing. Like, it's terrifying. But after they have this act that happens to them, they don't tell anybody, and they're mentally affected by this whole thing, totally messed up. Her brother doesn't handle things well, and I'm going to leave it at that.
That reminds me of another Mexican horror movie called We Are the Flesh. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't.
We Are the Flesh, or in Spanish it's called Tenemos la Carne. And
Tenemos la Carne. Okay.
Tenemos la Carne, and it's from 2016. Visually, it's striking, but let me read the plot outline.
Yes.
An unknown apocalypse has devastated the globe, forcing siblings Lucio and Fauna to forage for food and shelter in a hostile environment. They happen to come across Mariano, a man who offers them both of these things, but at a cost. They must help him turn an abandoned building into a cave cocoon-esque structure. He also demands that the siblings have sex with one another while he watches and masturbates. With few other options, the two comply, only for this act to be the start of many strange and horrific things they must do in order to survive. Now, I had heard about this movie, and I was like, oh, it's on Blu-ray. Click. I was stunned by this movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, the way it looks, and it casts a spell. It's it's a striking film. And while, it deals with incest and all that, there's so much more going on. God bless the Mexicans for making these movies. You know, New Order. And I don't know what's going on in Mexico, man, but there's a lot going on there. But
that sex act in Tenemos el Carne, as you mentioned, and in the film that I mentioned, they're using sex to present us in a scenario that is terrifying, because I think that's probably everybody's worst nightmare, is to be in a situation where you're forced, you know, it just so happens that they're siblings, but even if it's somebody that you don't know, you probably don't necessarily want to have sex with someone you don't know, or, you know, a stranger or whatever, you know. I don't even want to think about that scenario. Like, that would make me just feel physically sick.
But that's in terms of horror. Yes. That is truly, you know, that's real horror, and it's life and death, and what you're being forced to do is break one of the great human taboos.
Yes.
You know, which is to copulate with your sibling. And while, Jamie Lannister had no problem doing it, but most people would. Although what I find very interesting lately, if you read about and I read stuff like this, like what are people into? Apparently, incest porn is a big deal, nowadays, like on porn sites. Although they're quick to say, this is what I thought was interesting. So incest porn is watched a lot, but everyone's like, oh, it's their step siblings. Like they won't go like brothers and sisters, step brothers. And I'm like, and sisters. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're going to play that card, but you're not going to, and it's all made up anyway. It's actors that don't know each other. It's not real brothers and sisters, but the scenario they paint for you, it's the same thing about, in your own mind, you make it all up anyway. But I just find that's a funny thing about porn, is that subset of porn gets a lot of traction apparently, but they won't go far enough. They won't go and say it's actual brothers and sisters. They'll say it's so ultimately it's okay because we're not really related. But like We're the Flesh, and it's what's the name of the movie? Alex and what?
I believe it's called Anna and Daniel.
Oh, Anna and okay.
Or Daniel and Anna, something like that. Let me just look it up because I could be saying it wrong. It's their names. It's I think it's Anna and Daniel.
Yeah.
And it's also by the same director who did New Order.
Yeah. Well, that guy, I mean, I love that guy. That guy's a taboo breaker, man. I mean, it's Daniel and Anna, and it was a film that came out in 2009. And ironically, is it on physical media? Let's see, shall we?
Ironically, the film represents, or let's say, is based on a real life story.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And apparently it's a big problem. People getting sort of abducted, forced to do these sexual acts is probably the porn that we see on Pornhub.
Wow. You know what? It's on DVD. There's only 2 left. I'm going to order that shit right now.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You're ordering a film. Wow.
I'm going to order that. Yeah, man. Come on. What's up? What's not to love? It's only on DVD, even though I don't usually order stuff only on DVD, but I will. Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I do this?
You will like it, Robert. It's
I'm
it's
sure
disturbing.
I'll like it. Yes, I will. And it's
and
ordered.
I want to know what you think about it, because as I've said, they use sex. They use a sex scene, and sex is used quite a bit in it going forward. To give you that element of dread, because it's just so well done. This director, he's phenomenal, and if he could make a film like that, he could probably make any horror film. So I have to commend him on that one. That really bothered me. But back to sex in horror films, I think that when someone decides to, let's say you have a great story for a horror film, you are a creator and you want to create your own horror film. And, perhaps sex is not something you intend on putting in the film, or some sort of sexual element. There are so many advantages to it. There doesn't actually have to be consummation in a horror film for it to be sexual.
Right.
But, I'm kind of curious as to how, at what stage, if someone wanted to incorporate something into a horror film and they felt, this might add a little bit more substance to my film, grounded, and make the film seem more believable. I was watching a film the other day about a young lady who's a nurse, and she's a nurse for a woman who is incapacitated. She's, can no longer take care of herself. But in the story, the woman who's incapacitated has a friend come over, and supposedly they have sex in the story. And, I think it's very interesting because, that was probably the last thing you were thinking about a woman who's incapacitated, is that she's going to invite a lover over.
Yeah, I know that movie.
Yes.
I've heard that movie. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Jennifer Eel plays the woman. And I thought that was such an interesting twist. because, obviously, this woman was a vibrant woman and she enjoyed sex, and nothing was going to stop her from having a sexual experience again. But the story is a horror film. Now, from what I understand, there may be quite a few more super chats, Robert, that
there's a ton.
See them. I can't see them. Okay.
I know there is a ton. Let's just go back. Let's do it since we got people tonight, and then we'll go back. Louis Terrazas says, Rob, and Diamonds Are Forever, I can't tell you how, but I've seen the new Bond movie, and it's one for the ages. You will see, big dog. Goddamn deja vu again. Look, I can tell that this Bond movie is one for the ages. Cary Fukunaga, who directed it, made the first season of why am I drawing a blank on the first season of, I want to say Bad Lieutenant. It's not. It's the TV show with True Detective. He did the first season, and he did Beasts of No Nation or whatever. He's a great director, so I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. And if you're saying it's good, I mean, look, no offense, Louis, but as a lifelong Bond fan, I got to see it myself. But that to me, I'm excited. I'm excited. If you're excited, you say it was great. It looks great to me. I can't wait.
Beasts of No Nation was truly a victorious film, even though the nature of the film was
hardcore. But Beasts of No, it was such a great movie. I loved it. I mean, that's why Cary Fukunaga is a great director. They had a lot of time to make this movie, and I'm expecting great things. I'm expecting it to be the best of the Daniel Craig Bonds, which will be a great bookend with Casino Royale, because I think Casino Royale, I have not been a fan of the other three Daniel Craig Bonds, not as much as I would have wanted to be. I love Casino Royale, though. S-Beam sends in a super chat. Thank you, S-Beam. Dos Gecko. Says, okay, is it just me, or are you two soulmates? I don't know. Are we soulmates?
What? He's not talking about you and I, is he?
I don't know. I think he might be.
Yeah, maybe we are.
We could be. I've never met. I mean,
we've never met.
We've never met. She's on the other side of the country, so
That's right.
I've never met her. Like it'd be funny. Like, I would know you if I saw you, if I could see your face. But if I was walking behind you, I don't know. Can I ask you a personal question?
Okay.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'4".
You're 5'4". Okay. Well,
yes.
Now that would give me. Okay. So if I saw, I vaguely know what your hair looks like. So if you were walking in front of me in New York on the street, I could be like, okay, if you're 5'4", because now I know because I'm 6'1". So depending on where I was, I'm like, okay. So I would know that the plane of my eyesight, if it was here, that I'm like, maybe that was you. But if it was here, it wouldn't be you. So that's good to know.
Well, I think, I have so much respect for you, Robert, and I know you feel the same way about me.
Yeah.
And I've probably told you this before, but you remind me of this young man that I grew up across the street from. His name was Ari. And I grew up with him, and, it was in the 80s and 90s. And so I kind of, you remind me very much of him. He, loved entertainment as well. And,
he loved, I think in past tense?
He passed away last year. Yeah. He passed away last year.
I'm sorry.
He was actually having heart surgery, and he passed away. And what's even more disturbing about it is that we kind of lost touch for a while, and I missed his friendship, So, when you lose it's not that we weren't good friends anymore. It's just sometimes when you
people drift apart.
You miss them.
I found that to be true. Like everybody that I've ever been friends with, I still like them. I don't have anybody. I'm not a person that doesn't. My default position is to like people. Because even people that I think have difficult personalities. I mean, I like them. I like them because they have difficult personalities. So anybody who I've ever liked in my life, I still like them. There's nobody there's actually two people I dislike in my entire life. Two. Because they're monumental douchebags. But other than that, I like everybody. Except these two. And by the way, all of you should hate these two people. But and you would. Because they are. But yes. So
I do think we're soulmates
Yeah.
because, I do feel like, we have a lot in common and we get along well, and we can enjoy the beauty in the cinematic experience.
Yeah,
together.
and plus, I mean, and I can't thank you enough for being so supportive with Tango Shalom and all of that. And by the way, it looks like even though we're not doing great this weekend, because no one is doing great this weekend except Shang-Chi, but it does look like we're going to go to Miami and Philadelphia, so we're still playing. We're still going to, because there's no movies in theaters. But it's really been frustrating. Like, no one's reviewed the movie. There's been, even though our Rotten Tomato score went up to 86%, it's still, it's weird. It's such a weird time, but I would have thought that there would have been more. And of course, nobody who works in the, or lives or works in the YouTube space who can see the movie, they're not going to review my film.
Well, Scotty and I reviewed your film.
Oh, no, I know, which was fantastic. But, and I can't thank you enough, but I mean, other YouTubers with like outlets that I've worked for, there's no love for me, let me tell you. It's because it,
well, give it some time, because, you never know.
It's true.
Yes.
It's true, but I have to say that like the people that like Film Threat, I've known Chris Gore for years. He didn't even review the film, but he gave it to another reviewer, and I was terrified what Film Threat might have thought of Tango Shalom. And we got a great review from them, and it was a guy who I don't know. I don't have any connection with him, and he could have written a terrible hatchet job. He didn't. It was an incredible review, which was great, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen when you make something and what people think. I mean, in the space that I work in, I think a lot of people get surprised. Like on the other day, I was being attacked again on Twitter for the comments that I made when I got basically canceled. When it was interesting to me. Talk about horror. There's a great horror movie to be made about somebody like. So, for those of you who don't know who are watching this show now, there was during the Black Lives Matter riots of last summer, the summer of 2020, I was very upset by a video that I saw of Police Captain David Dorn, a black man in his 70s who was protecting a pawn shop, and he was gunned down on the sidewalk, and somebody posted a video of just his dead body. And he was father of 5, grandfather of 10. And because the people that I work with didn't know this, but I make this medical lecture series that I work with. I've been doing it since 2017 to provide pre-hospital care for people who have been shot or in active violent events. And I work with local law enforcement. And so it was not I did not use the best language, but when I retweeted this, I was so angry, and I wrote in all caps, you want outrage, motherfuckers. I'm like, shoot to kill, and where's a Second Amendment advocate when you need them? And people that I work with, that I knew, took my tweet out of context with the video, and they said I was advocating killing looters, which I understand why people might have thought that if you just watch my words, but the point was I was being darkly sardonic. It was definitely Dr. Strangelove humor. I was so upset by this, and it turns out it was armed robbers that went under the cover of a riot to rip off this pawn shop, and this police captain was protecting it. And so the people I work with at the Schmodown were pissed at me and all that. Now, I get it, but what was interesting was John Campia called me, and he goes, "Hey, man, I read your tweet." This is before any of this went down. And he's like, you've already sent the tweet out, but you might want to make a video clarifying what you meant. So I made an apology video for this tweet, and no one had seen really the tweet yet. There had been no backlash from this yet. So I had already made. So I'm like, all right, that makes sense. And I went on to explain what I was talking about. So I already made an apology video. And then after I'd done it, then people that I knew and work with took my tweet, and they did not take the video I had retweeted it with, and took the words out and were pillorying me on social media. And it was interesting because I'd already apologized. So there was already, I didn't have to be destroyed first and then sheepishly go make an apology video. I'd already made one. And I was like, okay, this is not, and yet people still went after me, and it became a big thing. And what was interesting was, I'm like, I could make a horror film about this. Like, this is what I found interesting about it was there were people that I was very fond of, that I work with, that I had great respect for, but I only went in and worked I work and then I would leave. I'd do my little bit and I would leave, and I played a part. But there were people that I was very fond of that came after me on social media and started calling me like a garbage person. And it was shocking to me because I'm like doing my show. I was making Tango Shalom, and I'm doing this medical lecture series about providing pre-hospital care for people who are in active violent events that I've been working on since 2017. But none of them knew any of this. And
right.
you can't expect somebody to know. But it was really interesting to watch people that I'd work with, because I just assume that people, you feel they kind of know, like, because I talk about it all the time. Tango Shalom or this, that, and the other thing. But they don't. They don't know. But there was a lot of people that I liked, and I thought we had a great working relationship, but they didn't really know me. And in a way, I've tried to, since that time, to come up with an idea of a great horror film about somebody that, very Kafka-esque, like somebody who's trying to do good in the world through their works, and they make this mistake that is misconstrued by people, and they slowly have everything about their lives completely stripped away from them, piece by piece by piece.
A Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah. But I want to do it. I mean, and it was funny because when I was in that process and I had to like apologize to all these people, and it was so weird. It was such a weird position to be in, because I'm like, well, I did make an apology video. You guys came after me after I made my apology video. But so I was in this position where I was trying to be nice, and I was trying to make everybody else feel okay. And these people were destroying me on social media. And it was very interesting, and I'm thinking, and I'm just sitting there worried, like, oh, I hope this person, because I like these people, I hope they're not offended, but it was so weird because I got nothing out of it, but it was that people did not understand who I was in the first place. And I thought that would be the basis of a pretty great horror movie, is that we don't know one another. And what's really interesting is we now live in a society where I think people want to destroy people. And social media has given us a justifiable outlet where it's okay to indulge, like you look at movies like New Order, where the leftists are going after the elites, and you can give in to your baser desires and it's excused. But that's what's happened on social media. You can destroy people. Yeah, whether people have families or livelihoods, or you don't know if they're the breadwinner and a spouse is suffering from a terminal illness. You don't know. And if somebody doesn't like you, they can start a campaign and within a day literally destroy your life and take your livelihood away, and it's acceptable. And I'm like, there is a horror movie in that.
There is, and it's not exactly the same thing, but one of the first films that I ever saw that touched on the influence that maybe not social media, but the internet can have, early internet interactions can have, and the film actually had an isolation theme to it, where in the story it was you're going to figure out who I'm talking about and what the story is, but in the story is a character who pretty much kept to herself, and she worked in IT, and she didn't communicate with her neighbors. No one knew who she was, and she goes on vacation, and somehow her identity is sort of erased. It's Sandra Bullock in The Net. And, like the idea that someone could be so affected by a simple keystroke or an attack, like a keystroke attack. And, she had to come back into the United States under a false, passport identification just to get back into the United States. And then, of course, the movie culminates with her, getting success by, putting in a floppy disk and pressing the escape key. And, she knew that that's what would happen if they did a certain, the Control-Alt-Delete sort of scenario for them. But it's an interesting concept. And I would be very interested to see if you could incorporate, not to sound disrespectful, but if you could incorporate some sort of sexual part into it. Perhaps not, but that I think that would be quite interesting, because tonight we've been talking about sex and the effect that it has, or the way it can enhance a horror film. And one thing that we were talking about, I think it was, is it Verhoeven who recently made the film that about
Benedetta,
lesbian...
the Catholic nuns?
Yes. And
I guess
what's interesting
all you have
about
to say
it
is nuns. You don't say Catholic nuns, so nuns.
Right. What's interesting about it is the audience's perception of the characters, the nuns' characters, before they have sex, while they're having sex, and after they have sex. And I think that, using that element, and because that certainly, I don't think a lot of people would have placed sex in that particular film. About nuns. That's not something they would have conjoined together.
Well, I mean, there is the subgenre of nunsploitation that was popular in the 70s. And it goes all the way back to Black Narcissus, which is an amazing film.
Yes.
So nunsploitation, I mean, defiling nuns can be a horror thing too, and again,
and we have seen that in quite a few, let's say, I'm not going to say made for TV stories, but I have seen it in quite a few. You remember during the Thornbirds period where there was these stories about nuns and priests, and I wouldn't call them a horror story, but there were some scenes in some made for TV adaptations where nuns going to different places and being in danger and getting assaulted there, and and just sort of like exploring those particular themes. But I think that when we're talking or we're looking at cinema and looking at films that are, Thornbirds was a masterpiece, but looking at and I think it needed to be made into a TV story. It needed that length for a proper adaptation. But of course, there's an incredible strong sexual undertone. It's not a horror film, but the sexual undertone in that story is off the charts. Well,
that's why we're talking about it now. People love the Thornbirds. I mean, it's one of the great TV stories ever. And I mean, what's again, I mean, sexuality is the closest we can ever get to another human being. Mm-hmm. Sharing yourself. And I mean, when you think about it, it's really, it is all kinds of goofy. Like you ladies, you get to walk around with your boobs all your life. But we as men, we're like, I mean, I love women with curves. But when you think about it, like you guys probably, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak, you ladies, you have breasts, they develop, you have them. The idea that guys want to see them all, like they're just a part of you. Like, I never think about my chest. Like, I never pay much attention to it. It's just, I never think about it. I'm like, I've got a chest, and if I work out, it changes, and I can be more, I never think about it. It never occurs to me to think about it. But I carry it around with me all day long, and it's there. And yet, men, we're obsessed with boobs.
Breasts are magical, Robert. They're magical.
They are magical, and I'll tell you something. When you find breasts that respond to just a tiny nibble or maybe a counterclockwise motion around an areola, and you feel, and you draw in a breath, and you can feel a nipple getting hard in your lips, between your lips. I mean, this is some great stuff, but it's also kind of goofy. Like, if you think about it, like men's fascination with breasts or whatever, and when you really think about it, like I have a physiological response to seeing great boobs. Like, I have blood flow into my nether regions. You know, I get
Yes.
an erection and I think about what I just said. I think about putting my lips on those nipples. I think about caressing boobs. Why? It ultimately is kind of bizarre. It's kind of a wacky thing. Like, you're like a woman's walking around and like she's got a body part, and it's the same is true of, by the way, other body parts as well. I'm a very oral person from a young age. I'm like, here's what I want to be doing, and even that's kind of weird. Like, who thought that one up? Like, one of my favorite things in any pop culture ever was when Ygritte and Jon Snow are in the cave, and she's like, "Why did you kiss me down there?" And he's like, "I don't know. It just seemed like the thing to do." I'm like, "You go, Jon Snow. I'm right there with you. Why are you doing that?" Because it just seemed like the thing to do, especially because she's a redhead. I understand exactly where he was coming from. Story of my life. And you know, why are those? Because it feels fucking good. But also, you got to bring your finesse game. You can't just do it. You have to know what you're doing. You have to understand anatomy and all that. But when you think about all this in the long run, it's just weird. It's just bizarre and crazy. It has nothing to do with procreation, but it has everything to do with human sexuality and what we think about, what we dream about. We want people to touch us in the way we want to be touched because it's our physicality. Like, we're these beings trapped in these. This is what I love about Cronenberg's horror. The reason I love David Cronenberg so much is the worst thing that can happen to a human being is when our bodies revolt against our minds.
Yes.
And that is going to happen, whether it's cancer, whether it's old age, which kills us all, the fact that, thank God I don't suffer from this, but erectile dysfunction, any of this stuff. I mean, your body...
Thank you for pointing that out.
I know, right? It's all right. Your body is going to... That's why a body horror is something a subset of horror that I love, because it's so horrifying. And there's nothing you can do. Like one of my favorite Cronenberg films is The Brood. And in The Brood, there's this doctor, Dr. Hal Raglan, and his whole idea of psychoplasmics, where you use your mind to externalize your pain, and your pain literally manifests as cancers or tumors or things on the outside of your body. I mean, it's some crazy ass shit, but it's awesome. And I'm like, this is what I love about body horror, is that I think the greatest horror of being a human being is that we are born into this world in a ticking time bomb that one day will kill you. Whether it's through old age or cancer or an aneurysm or a heart attack, we are vulnerable. Until this battle station is fully operational, we are... sorry, mixing my metaphors. But
I want to talk more about it, but we have those super chats waiting.
I know. I'm sorry. So okay. Terrier... Hello, Terrier. Terrier says, memorable moment of sexuality and horror from my youth. The guy sneaking a look at the girl in the raft in Creepshow 2. As an adult, I see it as a bit rapey. And then her fact melts from the lake monster. Yes, I love that. And that was the raft. I thought that was the best part of Creepshow 2. That was a great Stephen King story. Terrier goes on to say, Hellraiser. I went to a sexy party at a closed-down factory once, Hellraiser themed. A lot of bondage and vinyl to be seen. I'm never serious, so I dressed as the lament configuration. I love that. You go to a vinyl fetish party dressed as a puzzle box. God bless you, Terrier. God bless you. I hoist my glass to you, sir. Stub McShave from Sweden says, both violence and sex are expressions that come from different aspects of passion. Yes. One is constructive passion. The other is destructive passion. Violence and sex that doesn't spring from a source of passion is the thing that's really unsettling to us. Ooh, I like that idea.
Yes.
I like that idea a lot. That's very, very insightful, sir.
Yes.
Violence and sex that doesn't spring... Well, that's the thing. There's nothing more dehumanizing than violence and sex that's not from passion. That that somebody can actually take a life or violate or defile someone's sexuality just because. I mean, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse, I think, than that one person can do to another. Clint Baker says, if you can scare people and stimulate people at the same time, that's a good thing. I wholeheartedly agree with that. What do you think?
I agree 100%. And I think that that's the objective of many horror films. So, yes.
Kaz Graphics, we already said, he sent in a super chat, a sticker. Thank you, sir. Kaz Graphics, of course, is the official cheesemonger of the Post-Geek Singularity, of the Burnettwork of Raw Observations. By the way, Kaz Graphics, I've said it before, I'll say it again. His pictures on Facebook, I've never met him. And I've never even spoken to him. But goddamn, he just looks like the coolest dude ever. I want to fly to Seattle and just hang out with him and his friends. I just want to wander around with Kaz Graphics. It would be great. I drink from his glass. He sent me this glass, and I drink from it all the time. One day, I'm going to go to Seattle, and he says he might come to LA, so I owe him a meal. Jason S. says, today is in remembrance of the tragedy that occurred 5 years ago to the day when Hillary got thrown into the back of a black van like a rag doll. Never forget. Oh, Jason. I know. God bless you, sir. Love having you here, but come on now. Hillary? Still? Got to move forward, man. Got to move forward. Vote no on the recall. Just saying. Ooh, Durrell. I got it. Durrell sends in a tip and says, The Entity, 1982,
yes.
A movie about a woman being tormented sexually by an invisible demon. Barbara Hershey. I was only 10 or 11 at the time, and seeing that it said the story was true, it made it even more scary. Not sure if the true story part is real sex and scary. Durrell, let me tell you something. When I started junior high school, I had the book The Entity by Frank D. Felitta. And on the cover, it had a picture of a woman, her neck, and thrown back. And on the cover, it said, you know what? I'm going to find this cover. So I had this book taken away from me by Mr. MacArthur, my English teacher. And it says on the cover, it says, ravaged night after night, preyed upon by a spectral rapist. And it was taken away from me. And I was so pissed. I had to go to the principal and get it. I'm getting this book. I'm gonna. Oh, there it is. I found it. I found that I love the internet. God bless the goddamn internet. So, here was, although this looks like the cover of this is the hard cover, I think. But it is the cover of the book. Hang on, I'm going to put it up here. This is, it is the hardcover. I need the paperback. But it's got the same kind of cover. So I'm looking at images. I'm going to find the actual paperback cover because, wow, now here it is. I found it. I found the paperback. Yep. I've got it now. Yep. This is the best. And so I had this book taken away from me. My first day of 7th grade was... My first day in 7th grade was September of 1979. 1979. And here is the cover. And it was actually the back cover I'm thinking of. I got to show this to you because it's rad. And
Barbara Hershey's performance was out of this world.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. So here is the cover of the paperback of The Entity. I had this book taken away from me my first day of 7th grade. So here it is. There's the cover of Frank D. Felitta's The Entity. The ravaged night after night was on the back. Beyond physical reality, beyond ecstasy and pain, to a dark netherworld of psychosexual truth. So there it is. I had this book. Can you imagine? There I was, 12-year-old Bobby Burnett, took The Entity with me to school, took it to English class, and it was taken away. Taken away. So much for sex and horror when I was a young man. So, Darrell, thank you for that. The movie's great, too. And, yeah, a lot of fun there. Tom Jr. Jackson says, I've stayed at a hostel. Did you have a good time there? D. Duval 59 sends in a tip and says, I marathoned a few metal horror movies tonight. Malignant, which was great fun. House of a Thousand Corpses, less fun. Yeah, it's not fun. And Slither, just as great as I remembered. I think the killer from Malignant enters the pantheon of great James Wan monsters myself. What do you think? Oh, I'd say so. For audacity. But we can't say anything about it because has not got to the end yet.
I will watch. I promise you, I'm going to watch it sometime today. I will. I promise. And I'm actually going to rewatch it from the beginning. I'm going to start at the beginning and watch the whole film from beginning to end.
You need to watch. You do. Riley Rayburn says Harvey Weinstein has to be one of the people you hate. Actually, no. He's not. I've never met Harvey Weinstein. I mean, he's a monumental douchebag. But, you know, I see Harvey Weinstein as, believe it or not, I mean, he's not exactly a great beauty himself. And, you know, he's one of these guys that he abused his power. He was getting great movies made. He was just a horrible person. He was a guy that grew up, he was denied women, you know, because the way he looked, which is too bad. And he became successful, and he used his success to abuse and take from women. And to me, that unfortunately that is such an easy thing to identify and understand, but it's awful. And he deserves everything he gets. And those kinds of people have made the entertainment business not a great place to be. And you know, he abused his position. And what's amazing to me about him is, I don't know if anyone has ever seen the woman he married. She is exquisitely beautiful, and she was dynamic and had her own business, and she probably really loved him because she appreciated she was European, or I think, and didn't know what was going on. And I mean, he fucked that up. So yeah, he's what a douchebag. But I don't know him. I can't hate Harvey. I can only hate people I really know. I obviously dislike him, but I don't know him. Clint Baker says, Rob, you're absolutely right. You could call it social. Now, I don't know where we're at in terms. I don't know what you mean by that. Social? Do you remember what I said? I don't know.
I think perhaps he was talking about your social in regards to horror films, maybe.
Yeah. No, you're right. 200 Watt Studio says, hey, Rob. Hey, gorgeous. Will there be a physical media today? Yes. There will be a Let's Get Physical Media. Dieter and I are back. We will be joined by a guest, even though Dieter doesn't know this yet. Bill Hunt of the Digital Bits is going to be on Let's Get Physical Media today. I can't wait to come back.
Thank you, 200 Watt Studio.
Thanks to thanks to a lot of other people. You know, it's been a good week here on the Burnettwork. We're going to close it out with the Let's Get Physical Media. It's good. Ron C. sends in a very nice super chat. Says, morning metal, off topic. Remakes are never ending. Which of the three would you remake? Wow. Space Truckers from 1997, Saturn 3 from 1980, or Galaxina 1980. Have a scenario weekend. That's a really good... I've seen all these movies. I've owned all these movies. I would Galaxina starred Dorothy Stratton. My friend Mark Altman, who I made Free Enterprise with, was trying to remake Galaxina. I would probably remake Galaxina because I would turn it into some like full-on erotic explosion of, yeah. Yep.
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
I would really love to see that process of you know, taking a particular movie genre and then making it more erotic. for all of us to enjoy. I would love to see a process like that.
I mean, I have to tell you, I've talked about it before. I directed 5 episodes of Femme Fatales for HBO and Cinemax, and it's really hard. And I've been in 2 porn films. Not as I don't have a porn cock, but I've been in 2 porn films. I was in Star Wars XXX. I played Biggs Darklighter, and I was in a movie called Kiss of the Strangler with what's his face? A great guy. I actually really liked him. James Dean, the porno star James Dean. And he actually said to me, he goes, "You're a great actor, man." I was like, "Thank you. You got a great penis." I felt like Jim Morrison in The Doors when he tells Joe D'Alessandro, he's like, "I've seen your movies, man. You got a great penis." I felt that way about working with James Dean. But yeah, so
are there more super chats?
Oh yeah, there are. But really? I would remake Galaxy and Ronzi. The Richard says William Shatner in Incubus. It was a fucked up film that my grandpa shared with me. I inherited his Laserdisc. Incubus is great, because it's done in Esperanto, I believe. Incubus is the only movie shot in Esperanto. It's good. I like Incubus, the Richard. It's good. Yeah. 200 Watt Studio says, I found my Laserdisc of Excalibur. Gonna watch it tonight. Excalibur needs a 4K remaster badly. Wow. Riley Rayburn sends in a super chat and says, wish Bryan Singer a happy birthday for me on the 17th. Well, hang on. I know it's almost 2 in the morning, but I'll text him that right now. For you, Riley Rayburn.
On the 17th, it says?
Yes, on the 17th, it is Bryan Singer's birthday.
Okay.
And I'm going to send this to him right now. I'm going to be like,
happy birthday.
I'm live on my show. I'm live on my show.
We are wishing you a happy birthday.
And Riley Rayburn, and a viewer, I will put down his name, Riley, Riley, Riley Rayburn. Wishes you. By the way, he might respond right now. Wishes you a happy birthday.
Aw, that's so thoughtful.
So Riley Rayburn, I am now. I guess let's see. Is there any identifying features? Well, okay. I'm just saying. I don't know if you can see this. But I did just send a text to Brian right now of you wishing him a happy birthday. I don't know if I'll hear back from him. I don't know where in the world he might be right now. Don't know. But if he writes back, because sometimes he stays up very late. Mass Hussein says, hi, Robin. Have you seen Daughters of Darkness? Oh, yes, I have.
Yes.
A great erotic Euro horror film from the 70s, started the lesbian horror trend and many more. I don't know. I wouldn't say it started the lesbian horror trend, but it's definitely one of the granddaddies of lesbian horror. I mean, Daughters of Darkness, I think I have it now in 4K. I've owned it on every format. It's great. Daughters of Darkness is great. So yeah, if you haven't seen Daughters of Darkness and you like beautiful lesbian women vampires, I highly recommend it. So yeah, Mass Hussein, I'm a big fan of whether it's Jean Rollins French lesbian vampire movies, or Hammer's, lesbianism, you can't go wrong. The only problem with lesbianism in real life is that you, as a man, I get locked out. It's kind of a bummer. You're like, oh.
Well, that's part of the thing that we are going to continue to talk about after you finish with the super chats.
Yes. Okay, Taskmaster. We're almost done here.
No, I just...
by the way, we have to bring on, if anyone wants to be a guest, we're going to bring on guests to talk about this. You got time, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Bryan Singer has written me back. Yes. He writes back and says, tell him a big thank you. Not kidding. There's the answer. Can you see it? It's right there. You can see it. A big thank you.
Yeah. Wow.
I just did. So I just
It's very
did,
thoughtful.
and I'm going to say, you make me a YouTube legend.
Aww.
Legend. Okay, there you go. Tell him big thank you. So there you go. 200 Watt Studio also says, okay, I'll Brian just said, okay, 200 Watt Studio also says happy birthday.
Aww.
Wait, says happy birthday. Well, his birthday's in 6 days, people. I'm going to say early birthday. Early B-Day. There you go. So there you go. So even at 2 a.m, I'm conversing with people. It's crazy. I said 200 Watt Studio says no thank you. You light up the screen. Riley Rayburn says I'm the guy who made this Superman Returns video essay. Okay, I'm going to send him that now that I don't want to fill up his feed because he might be in the flagrant delicto or whatever. I don't want to bother Brian at 2 a.m. He's writing me back. I mean, what if he's like, a little boom, chicka, boom, bow. I don't want to bother
I don't
him.
think he would have answered your text messages if he were. But
You never
if he
know. He's
did
pretty polite.
Wow, he's quite the multitasker.
Oh, he is. Wait, Brian Singer just sent another message back. He says, tell 200 Watt thank you as well. Well, aren't I glad I stayed up late? That's what he says.
Mm.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask him, want to come on the show? Let's see. I'll see. Maybe I can just call him and we're talking about sex and horror. Wait, hang on. This could be good. I could call you. Wouldn't this be interesting? We'll see. He'll probably be like, I'm going to bed, dude. So, oh wait, he's writing me back. Haha, as if I'm an expert. That's what he wrote. But you are. I can't believe it. Anyway, we'll see. He keeps writing. Kevin Wellborn sends in a super chat and says, I love Blood and Roses. It's a very... Ooh, I can try and see if the connection is good. Okay. This could be very fucking metal. I'm going to call him right now.
Hello?
I can't believe you're still up.
We were watching a movie.
Okay, so I need to give you a little context. I do a midnight show on the weekends called Midnight Metal, where we talk about... so I have my co-host, she's a delightful woman from New York. We're talking about eroticism in horror films. And some people... Riley Rayburn randomly just said, please tell Brian Singer happy birthday. He was the guy that made the Superman Returns very complimentary video essay. So now that we're talking, and now that you've called, I'm going to ask you, Brian, what are some of your favorite depictions of sexuality in horror movies? Anything that comes to mind?
Oh, I think it's in... Is it in Friday the 13th, or the one with the arrow that goes up through the...
Yes, through Kevin Bacon's throat. That's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, that's the first thing. It is burned into my memory, yeah. Kevin Bacon, I didn't even know it was him. Wow.
It's Kevin Bacon, man. Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, well, that was it. I mean, that's the one that stuck with me the most, is because it's just like... it's there's something there. Women, obviously Psycho. There's all the famous ones that come to mind. But that one's, there's always, because always, once you have sex, then you're fair game. That was always a horror film tenet. It's like smoking pot or doing anything, mischievous, I guess.
Why do you think that is, though? Like this idea that you've sort of transgressed against something. Like teenagers are not supposed to be having sex, so once you have sex, like you said, they're fair game. But how do you think that came about? Like, is it our puritanical instincts? Like, oh, if you have sex, you must be destroyed by the.
Yeah, it takes the edge off the horror, and it's sort of a punishment for crossing a line, having premarital sex or doing, or doing drugs or something. It's sort of like we're being a bad person, and so it sort of takes the edge and allows you to go an extra step with the horror, because it's happening to somebody who kind of earned it cinematically, even though they didn't really earn it. They did in a sort of puritanical sense. But that's why when it happens to an innocent, even in Psycho, she steals.
Right.
She's on the run. She's a thief, and she gets hacked to pieces in the shower. But she's a thief, so it's kind of and maybe it started with you're able to ramp up the horror, provided it's happening to somebody who isn't an innocent. So when it's happening to an innocent, it's more troubling to people, and so then they become these cautionary tales. But they're not; they're just excuses to amp up the horror, probably.
By the way, there's a number of people in this chat asking about public access, believe it or not.
Oh.
Any word on getting public access out on Blu-ray?
No, I mean, we're having trouble because I don't even have a print or a good disc of it, so I've got to probably call somebody, even to find a version of it. The version I have is it's a VHS copy of some transfer. I mean, it's my own movie. It's embarrassing, but I Blu-ray. I would never. I mean, just getting it out on something would be nice, because I'm very proud of it in retrospect to the Prison of Time.
Well, isn't it owned? Didn't a Japanese company pay for the movie?
Yeah, it was financed by the Tokuma Corporation of Japan. So I don't know who owned. I guess they own the negative. They own the rights to it, maybe. But I don't know if they would have lapsed after all these years. I don't know. I really don't know what the copyright or how that works.
But they must have. Yeah, we should find it. Let's find it. Let's do a special edition, brah. Come on, I need to do another Bryan Singer documentary.
I got to search around and see if somebody else has. You know who I might get reunited with? One of the co-writers on that. It wasn't just Chris McQuarrie. There's also a guy called Michael Dugan, and he lives in Maui. And I may go. And he's in hospitality now, so I may go visit him. And we talked for the first time in 20 years the other day, believe it or not, about not about this, about scuba diving, but maybe I'll ask him if he's got a good. I just don't know where the dates are, where the original, all that stuff. We'll figure it out. We'll talk.
Yeah. Well, by the way, how are you doing? How are things?
Good. Yeah, we're just having someone's having a birthday party in my backyard so it's a kind of a who's who in the backyard. While my sister and I were up late screening. We did back-to-back Dangerous Liaisons last night and Cruel Intentions tonight, which I haven't seen since it came out. It's actually good.
My favorite.
Really good.
I love when John Malkovich says, "Let's start with a few Latin words."
Yeah. Well, clearly, and Brian Felipe is doing kind of a John Malkovich honor. They're honoring them. I was, I hadn't seen that since it came out, so it was nice to watch them back to back. So now we got to watch Valmont. We got to complete the circle.
Yeah, you got Milos Forman. The grandfather of greatness.
Yes. And then apparently, talk about him to get a director. If you want to watch the theatrical cut of that movie, you got to buy it on eBay because they only screen the director's cut, which is a little long. But no, sorry, not that. No, I'm sorry, that movie.
Amadeus.
Amadeus, yes, which I want to watch because I haven't seen that in a while.
So good.
But so every night this Saturday it's focuses on horror.
Well, just tonight. I mean, it just we're having a long conversation.
Sex and horror. Sex and horror.
Yeah, sex and horror. It's sex and horror.
And sexuality and horror.
Yeah. Yeah, her name is actually the name of my co-host on this show at night, and we've actually never met. She's delightful, and she's very smart, and apparently I've been told she has very good academic credentials. And we met via the internet, so she comes on and does these shows with me on the weekends, and we never know where these shows are going to take us. And randomly, people are starting to wish you a happy birthday 6 days early. And because you've made some very good random appearances. This might be your best random appearance on this show ever. By the way, Jason Taylor went and saw my film Tango Shalom in New York, and he sent me. He was taking pictures of the credits, and he went and saw it. I'm like, bruh, what are you doing taking your camera out in the middle of the theater, you pirate? But that was quite nice. So,
Very good, very good. Well, my pleasure always. So, yeah, I'd love to come on the show sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have you on and do a proper. I mean, it would be interesting to talk about your cinematic influences. And I mean, we've done it before, but just having a rollicking, free-form conversation about all of this stuff. And
always.
All right, well, hey, it was great to talk to you. I'm glad you're well. And one day, now that I'm fully vaxxed, I got to come to your house and see. Don't say what you have, but I'll see what your amazing acquisitions of recent days.
And I just added a new one to the collection, which had to be approved by Her Royal Majesty's government to leave the United Kingdom. That's all I'll
Wow.
say.
Yeah, I did
tell you what that was.
No, you alluded to it. You said what it was, but you didn't say what it was exactly.
I think you'll find it interesting. I do. It's a little more sophisticated than some of the other things. But cool. Yeah.
I just like that you've acquired something from someone, one of the most iconic things ever, and it's the letter that you had from this person that you acquired it from. That's amazing.
It's very sweet. Oh no, that was.
Can you say what it is? Can you say what you own now? I won't say it.
I can say what it is.
Tell people. Okay, wait. Tell people what it is you have and who wrote you the letter.
I now own the hero sword from Excalibur, and John Borman wrote me the letter to authenticate it, and it was a personal and sweet and amazing letter from an idol of mine, and it spawned from a communication which developed into a relationship, and it was acquired directly. There was no intermediaries. It was just between the two of us, and it was shipped from Ireland before the lockdown, and it made it out, and it's been with me, and the fact that he was willing to part with it and was a gift, because I saw that movie first in theaters in New Jersey with my best friend, who's no longer with us, so it has a really special meaning to me. And to have that sword now with me and among these other collectibles in my screening room where it's close to me, and we found a way to hang it, and it's got the leather scarab with it. I mean, it's huge. I mean, you can tell. There were two other lighter versions that were made for fighting, but this was the hero version that was for all the hero moments. And he lists them all, and then he writes. It's a very sweet letter.
Well,
and,
the picture you sent to me, I mean, what a cool, of all the kinds of props to have from a movie, to actually have the Excalibur sword, and it was made by an actual sword master. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, the blade was made by Wilkinson. the blade company.
Yeah.
The Wilkinson shaving blade. I mean, it's Wilkinson blades, and then they pieced it. They put it together, and it's like a real. It's not sharp. I know, but the tip is. I mean, you don't want to stick somebody with it, but it's pretty heavy. It's a heavy sword. You wouldn't really be wielding this around in armor too long. You'd get tired. But it's longer than I remembered it, and
that's what she said. No, I'm just kidding.
Ouch. This is late night topic. I know, but that's my that's like it's a very personal acquisition, and it was the one that was made directly between the filmmaker and myself. So it was just he and I, and when we got on the phone to talk about it, he was like, "So what about this clandestine deal we're doing?" And I loved the way he said it. He's in his mid-80s, but he sounded like, he was 60 or 50, or I don't know. I was expecting, but. It was it's pretty cool. He's got some other cool stuff that he still has from the movie, but it's the title of the movie.
Yeah. So, well, can you get the Zardoz stone head from him? Come on, man.
I don't even know what that was. Yes, no, I saw Zardoz, yes.
You got to get it. I want that head. Come on. You can hang it from your screening room, flying around. Right.
I love how Rick and Morty. Did you see? Didn't they do the Zardoz episode?
Yes.
They did. Yeah. Great.
Well, I love talking about Excalibur with you at 2:14 in the morning. This is the greatest thing ever. So.
Well, I'm about to go. I'm actually chilling in the theater because I stay up late, so I actually sleep in there, and the sword is hanging there above me. So I will give it a special. I will give it a night's kiss for you.
I appreciate that, sir.
All right, man.
All right. Well, I hope to see you soon, and you sound good, and we'll talk later.
All right, and thank you for the good wishes to the audience and to the group.
All right, and if I don't see you in the next 6 days, happy birthday, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye. See ya.
Come on, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Singer, owner of the actual Sword of Power Excalibur.
Wow.
200 Watt Studio says horror sax was what my girlfriend said I gave her. And 200 Watt Studio says, holy cow, I just mentioned Excalibur. Well, there you go. No, Brian actually has brought John Borman, the director of Excalibur, had this for 40 years and gave him the sword. So he sent me pictures of it when he first got it. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? Should we bring on someone to talk about sex and horror and all those things?
Of course.
Let's see who's going to come on this show. So anyone who is on this and wants to come on and talk, please come on. Here is a link. You can like the Evil Dead said, join us. And you can. So we shall see if any of you want to come on. Russ Whitfield. Okay, Russ. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. See, Russ, you going to be there? Oh, Russ is there. I can hear you. You're a little low, but yeah, we can hear you. Hang on a little bit. Hold on as I pour myself another drink. Let me put you. I'm going to put you into the show. Give me a moment, Russ. If you could pontificate for a moment, let me get Russ in here.
Sure. I'm just so excited that we got a chance to speak about horror films and the sex in horror films and how the sex is used in horror films. And I'm hoping that we can
we're going to continue this conversation. Come on now.
Yes. I mean, we started it tonight, but we have so much more to talk about, especially the idea of how the characters can change before, during, and after a sexual act in a horror film. So, I'm really excited about that discussion as well. And, from what I've read, the director of Benedetta seems to be able to successfully do that.
Russ Whitfield disappeared. He disappeared, and we've got a Russ. I'm sorry you disappeared, but Darren jumped into the fray. Darren, Are you there? I don't see. I wasn't
I can
seeing
see
him.
a face, but I can't hear him.
Yeah. That it clipped. Uh-oh, the Richard's here. Should we let the Richard on?
Sure.
All right. The Richard's going to come on to our chat. There he
Hi.
is. Hang on. Let me put it. I got to put him in, coach. Just hold on a second. Although the Richard, we can hear ourselves on your feed. Hang on, you're not the Richard yet because we don't have you on the show. Let's see. Hold on. So, anything more before I bring? Let me get the Richard.
Let's bring on more guests.
I have to get his lower third up here. It's hard when I have to do this on the fly like this. The Richard. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our moderator. You know him, you love him. Here is the Richard on Midnight Metal. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I am feeling the love tonight.
You're sounding pretty fucking metal, dude. You're fucking metal. This is some metal shit, right? What's going on now? Wow.
I love it.
Wow, it's Halloween in
Somebody
September.
said, let's get horny.
Wow.
Talking about horror erotica, I couldn't help but feel excited.
Wow. I too. I've been excited all night. It's been good. So let me ask you this, Richard. When you talk about horror and eroticism, if you think about like what do you think? What are some of the movies that you think best exemplifies the use of eroticism in horror? Like, what are some of your favorites?
You've always gotta. Let me take out my fangs.
Yeah.
Now my real ones can grow. You've gotta always think about The Hunger because David Bowie, Catherine Deneuve, and oh my God, that whole film is eroticism. Mm-hmm. You've already talked about that, though.
You know, I gotta tell. I gotta
more about it. Let's talk more about it.
I gotta tell you what sucked. So I was in Portland last week, right, doing crisis medicine. On August 31st, they were showing The Hunger at this Hollywood theater in Portland, and Daniel Ash, was it Daniel Ash or David J, was playing a concert. They were playing a concert in the theater before they showed The Hunger. And I think maybe it was David J. And you know, you're talking about Bauhaus, Tones on Tail, and Love and Rockets, and I'm just like, oh my God! I almost delayed my trip and didn't come back because I wanted to go see that. And
you didn't. Oh, you didn't get to see. Oh, you didn't.
No.
You missed.
No, because I left early. And I really wanted to do that.
David, is it David J?
Yeah,
they've been out to Hawaii several times.
Yeah,
they have been separate though. They have come out though, and I mean, because we did a lot of goth clubs, a lot of goth events, and everything. It's
Daniel Ash,
echo.
David J, and Peter Murphy.
There you go. I've never seen Peter Murphy. I've always wanted to look like him. You can look at some older pictures of me, younger pictures of me, and I really tried to look like him. God, so sexy, so immaculate. Yeah, The Hunger is one of those movies that it's irreplaceable. Once you've seen it, once you've felt it, experienced it, and then I watched it before I got into the goth clubs in Hawaii. And when I got into that scene, holy macaroni. I mean, I did my magazine, I had my horns, I literally super glued horns to my head because I was so into all of this. I wanted to share a couple of my paintings behind me because this one right here is it's one of the first ones I could think of that's horror erotica, tentacles and everything, because I wanted to kind of be on theme, on point for tonight. The blood and everything was last minute. I just happened to have it here.
Well,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, I mean the tentacle thing, like hentai in anime, I've
Oh
always.
boy.
Well, I remember
Robert.
the first time I experienced that was a series called The Wandering Kid, Yoratsuki Doji, and
Yeah.
that was I picked that up on Laserdisc. I didn't know anything about hentai or whatever. I just heard The Wandering Kid was something interesting, and I bought this Laserdisc, the Yoratsuki Doji. What is it? The Overfiend or whatever. Yeah, but it was the first one. I just knew it as Yoratsuki Doji, The Wandering Kid, and I brought it home and I put it on, and it was not, there was no subtitles. It was in Japanese. And I was watching it, I'm like, all right, what is this? And I'm like, what is going on here? And then of course, of all of those, I think my favorite is Bible Black. If you want to see a pretty interesting hentai anime, Bible Black is where it's at. But it was a weird, like, that was talk about eroticism in anime and horror. I mean, obviously, the Japanese have a very different approach to sexuality, especially in terms of pop culture entertainment.
You could say that.
Yeah,
and I lived there for 15 years. A lot of the population was Japanese. So we had Filipino, we had Korean and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're doing, like, a lot of the clubs weren't necessarily mine, though I did have my own clubs as well. And we would project those hentai or similar films up on the walls as we're playing, like Bauhaus and Sister Mercy and all the dark music, but you'll see all the tentacles and, like, even the wall, the video for the wall.
The flowers and the yeah. No, I all very. I mean, you can't. In terms of sexuality and horror, and a lot of that stuff, you're talking about this apocalyptic demon coming up from hell, end of the world stuff, which is always very interesting, and then also the whole fetishistic Japanese schoolgirl idea that they're all being violated by these giant demonic entities was always very interesting. Like, where did that come from? What is that? I don't quite know, because not being a part of the culture, I can't really give you an accurate assessment of what it all meant. I mean, obviously they were fetishizing schoolgirls, and there was a lot of that, but that kind of violation was pretty extreme, and it's very interesting. I mean, I don't, again, I haven't delved into it. I don't know enough about it.
I don't know exactly how to answer that. I can answer a couple things from earlier, though. Obviously, Near Dark is my favorite movie of all time, and you're talking about May and Caleb, and in the truck scene. That was very seductive, and of course, her coming out when he's getting bit by the mosquito at the beginning of the movie and everything.
Yeah, when he first meets her, and she walks out. When she walks out of that, like, I don't know, the Five and Dime or whatever, and the way she's, they first meet. You've never met a girl
and he's like,
me.
"Can I have a bite?" And she's like, "Bite?
Yeah,
I'm dying for a cone."
Yeah.
Dying?
It's great.
Now, you didn't mention, and I'm surprised, you did not mention Teeth tonight, which I think is actually inferior. Let me say, pretext it here. Teeth is good. It's a fun, erotic movie about vaginal. I forget what it is.
Vagina dentata.
I can't remember what it's called, but the teeth are in the vagina.
Dentata,
yeah. Now, there's a movie, and I put this out in the chat, and I'm trying to figure out what it's called. I've got it here somewhere, but it is. I think it's called. Oh shoot! It's. I think it's Thai, and I think it's called. Shoot! It's Angst. It's Angst, though it's under a different title in Thailand or whatever country it is. So if anybody in chat knows, essentially it's Teeth, except instead of just biting off your member or his member, she sucks him into another dimension.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah, see, to me, I mean, here's the thing. I think that while that's interesting, I don't know if it's, like one of the, I think one of the movies that I I had such high hopes for, and I think the first half is great. Is a movie called It Follows. Have you seen this, RM? Yeah. The first half, the first 45 minutes is great, and then it completely. There's a scene. I had never seen a movie lose the plot more in my life than It Follows. And
I would say the first 3/4 of it are near impeccable. It's just that one moment.
No, see, I wouldn't. I think it goes up to a scene into this boathouse, and then there's a scene. It's a really interesting movie, really creepy. It really works. And then even the director said, "Yeah, we didn't know. Like they literally didn't know. They create this great mythology, and that basically it's a sexually transmitted disease as an entity that you have to pass along or whatever." But they didn't know what it was. It was an impossible premise that they didn't understand the end. They even said, we didn't know how to end it. And
it's a supernatural, it's a supernatural sexually transmitted disease type thing. And like I have to highly recommend it no matter what. Even if the ending does fall short, the build up and all of the creepy invasion of the body snatcher moments.
Oh no! In the first 45 minutes, there's scenes when some of the creepiest shit I've ever seen, where these people are just walking straight at the camera. I mean, there's some really great stuff, and that's why I saw the movie in a theater. I was so excited to see it. I went and saw it actually at the ArcLight with my friend Dave Hargrove. In the morning, like I think it was a Sunday morning, we went and saw it, and we were both so with it until it gets to this boathouse scene where they couldn't reconcile what was actually going on with the premise broke. It was an interesting thing with this really intriguing premise, but they hadn't figured out what it really was. So then they violated their own rules, and it made no sense, and it was just over. And I was like, God damn it, because I was waiting for them to deliver the goods, and I was so with that movie. And again, the idea of an anthropomorphized sexually transmitted disease is supernatural. It was great. The premise was great, and it was so well done until it wasn't. And,
now, I write a lot of supernatural horror erotica, and I have ever since I was like 15, whatnot. Another movie that I would compare to that, total different. I mean, it's different, though I felt she was so sensual, is Innocent Blood. From like 1992.
With La Femme Nikita with Anne Perrault from that was John Landis directed that.
Correct.
I liked Innocent Blood. You know, it didn't totally work, but definitely erotic. I mean, that's an interesting movie too. I need to go back and watch it.
Well, how would you, and I remember when Innocent Blood came out, and she supposedly, I remember this very specifically, she narrates during the film, and she mentioned that she, or at least she tries to go after the bad guys, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, but how would you fix a film, let's say it doesn't quite meet the mark? What could be done with something like Innocent Blood so that it could go to the point where we're satisfied with it?
I wrote a sequel to it because I'd already written a 215-page vampire novel when I was like 16 or whatever, and then I see this when I'm 18, I think it was, and I felt, oh my God, this fits. Though I didn't like the humor. Off and on, the humor in a lot of these movies kind of set me off. So I kind of switched it around and did not include as much of the humor. Like in my story, I love the cast, Robert Loggia and everything. I love them. I just didn't like them as over slap happy vampires. I'm going to get you now.
Yeah, I think that movie had a tonal problem because it was at war with itself. But it's still, it had a lot of great stuff in it. By the way, Paul sends in a tip and said Hellraiser. I agree with this. Paul says, Hellraiser is the perfect blend of metal, horror, and erotic. I would agree with you. I think you're right, Paul. And it was only because Clive Barker I don't think any other director could have. I mean, they've made so many different horror versions of Hellraiser, and they never work. I like Hellraiser. I actually like all three, the first three Hellraisers. Hellraiser 3 is kind of ridiculous, but I like it. But Hellraiser 1 and 2, Hellraiser Hellbound, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that. But Clive Barker's, I mean, so many of his books, like Magica, The Great and Secret Show, the Great and Secret Show, and what was the Everville? Was Everville the second one? I mean, I'm a huge Magica. I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker's horror fantasy, but it's so weird and out there. It's so difficult to translate.
What he did really, really well. I mean, there are complaints, and I'm surprised that there are complaints about Hellbound. Growing up, I thought that they were like the perfect duo. I thought it was a perfect part 1 and part 2, and then later on I hear that there are complaints, and I kind of broke it down later on. I realized, though, if you look at Julia as she's wearing her after she's come back and she's wrapped up and she's taking his hands to her lips across her strappings and everything, that's pretty sensuous.
Yeah, I mean, Clive Barker was very good about that. I mean, and I do like the vision of hell that's presented, or wherever they are with the Leviathan and Dr. Chinard and all. It's all very interesting. But his work.
Sorry.
No. I was just saying his books are like Pi Opa, the Assassin and Magic. I mean, there's so much crazy shit in his books, like beyond. It's amazing stuff. His imagination is very singular, and it's driven by very certain specific things. But no one else was doing what he was doing, so
it's amazing that he was able to get that on camera. Because I mean, as much as he did, because there is so much more in the books, in the comics. There's so much more out there, though. What he was able to present, it was a brain fuck, and we were all there for the ride. And, wow.
I mean, he only directed 3 movies. You know, he directed Lord of Illusion, which is from his Harry D'Amour stories, and then he directed Nightbreed, which is, I think, a deeply flawed. All versions of it. I have 4 versions of Nightbreed, but they're all deeply flawed. But still, I love it. You know, I
love Nightbreed so much. Okay, I mentioned this in the past. I've got the 6-timers club, movies that I watched 6 times in a row straight. Near Dark was the first one. Nightbreed, I believe, or The Doors was the second one, and then Nightbreed, I think, was the third one that I watched 6 times in a row. I actually flew out to England for the Cabal cut. It was actually the same week that you were there. You were across at the Odeon, and I was over here on the other side of Leicester Square. And it was the Cabal cut where they had the VHS clips. That's before they had the funding and everything. So I got to see that, and it's funny because we were there the same darn weekend back in 2012 or 12. Okay, 2012. Yeah.
No, it's great. By the way, Mike. Mexican Iron Man is here.
Hi,
Mexican Iron Man says, guess which East Coast Mexican is up early enough to finally catch you live? The virtual taco bar is open. I wish I had a real taco bar open right now.
I wish I had taco balls. Yeah,
Hail RMB, hail my good friends Richard and the great chat peeps of the Post-Geek Singularity. By the way, to know Mexican Iron Man is to love Mexican Iron Man. You know, I'm a big fan of voices, of people's voices. And Mike, Mexican Iron Man, he just has this voice that when you hear him talk about anything, it just makes you think that it's all just going to be okay. No matter what's going on, it's going to... If Mexican Iron Man's on the case, it's all going to be okay. You know, his soothing tones, he's enthusiastic, he's going to make you believe that no matter what's wrong, no, it's going to be okay. I love that.
Even when he and I argue about He-Man, we still love each other. That's what's funny. Like, he's got his views, I got mine. And I can't help but, wow, yeah, that's a really good point. I love you, man.
Well, that's what the Post-Geek Singularity is all about, man. You can dissent but love.
That's right.
It's
That's
true.
right.
So, we were talking about how characters are perceived before, during, and after sex, and there's a lot of parallelism in real life when you think about a partner or think about a person before a sexual act has occurred, while it's occurring, and then your perceptions afterwards. And it's interesting to see that being used in a film. And of course, we already mentioned, we were talking about how in some of the Friday the 13th series, or actually maybe in the whole thing, there's always the perception of the camp counselors before they have sex. And then after the sexual act, almost immediately is the horror part. But I was just curious as to what were some of your other favorite examples of different perceptions of characters. Like Basic Instinct has some of that in it, where you think about the attorney a certain way before you know that she was having a sexual relationship with the main character. And then after you find out that, then all of a sudden the dynamic changes. Things change dramatically in the story. So what were your guys' thoughts on some of your favorite examples of that, if you have any?
Oh my God. Can I just talk? I could pontificate about Basic Instinct for days. I mean, okay. So Paul Verhoeven has said, I'm a huge Paul Verhoeven fan. I've met him. When I first met him, I met him at the Seattle International Film Festival in 1985 when he brought his first English language movie, Flesh and Blood, to the festival. The Seattle International Film Festival had launched Dutch cinema into America for a long time. And if you guys you want to talk about a movie about sexuality that I love, Paul Verhoeven's movie, The Fourth Man, hello, please, somebody, please, 4K, please, Studio Canal, somebody get his Dutch film, The Fourth Man. The Fourth Man is about Jérôme Crabbe plays an author who is a bisexual author who goes to a weekend retreat, and he meets Renee Stausendijk, who I met, an unbelievably beautiful woman, and she may or may not have killed her previous 3 husbands or boyfriends, and Jérôme Crabbe his character is having fantasies about not only him but her current boyfriend, this beautiful man who he has visions of him as Christ. I mean, there's a scene in a church where suddenly Renee Stausendijk's boyfriend is crucified on the cross, and Jérôme Crabbe pulls his loincloth down, and well, you got to see this movie because it's amazing, and I want it on 4K. But I think that what Verhoeven said about Catherine Trammell, the character that Sharon Stone plays in Basic Instinct, is that she's the devil. She is in fact Lucifer, and she manipulates, and just because she's a mischief maker, she fucks with people just to see, and she says it in the movie. By the way, I have a quarter scale statue of her character right over there. I'm a huge Basic Instinct acolyte. I love the film. I think it's great. But what's interesting about that is again, like you asked, when Jeannie Triplethorne, when her character reveals, like, well, we hooked up in college, and all this stuff, and she's like, she messes with your mind and blah blah blah, and you realize, wow, she's still in love with this girl, and she's just pissed that she was rejected. The rejection by Mephistopheles is a tough pill to swallow, and I think that's one of the things I love about the film is it was the perfect role for Sharon Stone, and the way she, I mean, everyone knows the famous leg crossing and uncrossing scene, but what I find really interesting about this is that Sharon Stone, to me, in my mind, people say, okay, Rob, in all of cinema history, I love this idea of, in all of cinema history, what what women would you most want to hook up with? There are two. There are two in my life. The first, and I love redheads, but neither one of them are redheads. The first is from Rear Window. Grace Kelly's character in Rear Window, who loves Jimmy Stewart, who is one of the most beautiful women in the world, especially, she's never been more beautiful than she is in Rear Window, but she packs this overnight bag that's like basically in like, she has everything she needs. She's the most feminine woman in the world, yet she doesn't need a gigantic suitcase. She has a little bag packed with military precision. I'm like, oh my God, I love that. Grace Kelly in Rear Window and Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct. Those are my two. If I could hook up with women, and I know people are like, oh, Rob, they're just you like those blondes. I mean, no, I love redheads too. I love, Julianne Moore in Shortcuts, who's wandering around with no panties on and her beautiful red punani. I mean, I'm like, come on, man, that is amazing. I love that shit. But no. But Catherine Trammell, to me, she is a spider. Like, if you want to sleep with her, it's going to be the greatest rapture of your life, but it will be the end of your life as well. You're done. You're finished. She will destroy you. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about that film. Like, men are willing to give up their lives. They're willing to give up their sanity for that sexual, like, I don't know what they think they're going to get. How great is it going to be?
It's a situation like the Black Widow. I mean, ultimately, a Black Widow will seduce the male and then eat the male. I was going to offer to, I can't remember the exact actresses from The Devil's Advocate, but also, in particular, Joanna Pacula from The Kiss, 1988.
It's a good one.
I remember her and...
Connie Nielsen in The Devil's Advocate, redhead.
Okay.
In Gladiator, let me just tell you, Keanu Reeves, they're like supposed to be siblings. If I was Keanu Reeves in The Devil's Advocate, I would be all over Connie Nielsen. I would have consummated that. I would have drenched myself in her feminine juices. Let me just tell you. I would have bent her over and put my tongue in her ass. I would have done everything to Connie Nielsen in The Devil's Advocate. I'm just saying that...
Wait, is that as their siblings, or is that the actors behind the scene, or both?
No, the characters in the film. The way they're portrayed.
So we're getting back to...
Yeah, like, I mean, Keanu Reeves' character in Devil's Advocate, Connie Nielsen in that movie, come on. Redheads, weakness, let me just tell you, I understand he had to, like, find God. No. I would have been like, okay, my dad, whatever, the devil wants me to take her, and we're gonna spawn the devil's child. I'm like, yes, I'm in. I would have given up anything to be with her in The Devil's Advocate. I would have been like, if I was Keanu Reeves' character, I'm like, I don't care. If I could just have Connie Nielsen as she appears in The Devil's Advocate. Now, I don't want to date her.
That elevator scene.
I just want that one moment of consummation. Actually, not one moment. I could use 3 or 4 hours of just pleasuring her in every way I know possible.
Wait, 3 or 4 hours for the rest of eternity? So what would you do?
Eternity. I'll be dead soon. Who cares? Look. The fact that our child, that I would have my incestuous relationship with Connie Nielsen and my dad was watching while I'm, putting my tongue in her ass, I don't care. I'm like, it's Connie Nielsen. I'm like, ultimately, she can consume me when I'm done. But if it was Connie Nielsen in The Devil's Advocate, and I could spend at least a couple hours getting what I want, like, what would be better than that? If she's gonna come and consume me, great. Let the rest of humanity deal with our devil spawn, because I won't be here. And by the way, we need to, the human race needs to fucking man up. And if I could have been responsible for the son of Satan showing up on Earth, being like, okay, maybe my good works with my sister, Connie Nielsen, and resulting in the son of Satan, maybe the Earth, maybe we would put down our phones, stop looking at TikTok videos, and actually do the work that we need to do to save the planet. Just from the devil, but still. and I would be gone, but I would be in the afterlife. I might be in the Stygian depths of hell, but I would still be licking her juices off my lips, and it would be worth it. Worth it.
Hey, now there's a movie that popped in my head, and I've been trying to remember it. You might remember. You guys might be able to pinpoint it because it has to do with everything that we talked about. Let me add Rosie Perez. It does have an incestuous moment, and it does have torture and bondage. Can you think of the movie? I'm telling you, it was hot, and it was like 1998, I think. Something like that. Does that ring a bell? I'm almost there.
I don't know, man. I
Dance with the Devil.
Oh.
1997. Rosie Perez. I don't know if I highly recommend that movie because it is exactly everything that we're talking about tonight, all rolled up into one, and nobody's heard of it.
Yeah, I think it has another title, doesn't it?
I haven't seen it.
I think no one heard of it because it was under another name, but I think I know the one you're talking about.
It says a psychotic criminal couple kidnap random teenage couple. The woman rapes the male and lets him watch his lover being raped by the man.
Wow.
And it's Rosie Perez, directed Alex de la Iglesia.
Oh, Alex de la... Oh,
And
my God. Day of the Beast.
There is
I'm a
an
huge
element of
Alex
body
de la
horror
Iglesia
in the
fan.
film as well. In that film, as well, in regards to harvesting, harvesting body parts and using them for, purposes they should never be used for. But yeah, that film is definitely intriguing and captivating and has all those elements that you talked about.
It goes, absolutely into this, and I'm glad that we were able to think of it. Yeah, that is, and Day of the Beast under a different name.
Which I love. I mean, I'm a big Alex de la Iglesia fan.
Yeah.
Wild at Heart. Oh my gosh, I forgot about Wild at Heart. Nicolas Cage. Talking about eroticism.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one thing. Another girl I've forgotten. It's not just Grace Kelly and Sharon Stone. It's Sherilyn Fenn and Two Moon Junction. and she's in Wild at Heart. She's in a car accident, and she's wandering around. Her head's bleeding. They cracked open because she was in Twin Peaks. I mean, terrible. But I love Wild at Heart. Sailor and what is it, Lula? Tallulah? Laura Dern's character.
Second time you mentioned Tallulah tonight, actually.
Well, it's her name's Lula. It's Sailor and Lula, right? Tallulah's our dog.
Yes.
So, I love Wild at Heart. I think it's great. By the way,
Sherilyn Fenn was also in that other one. I'm sorry. Just a real quick.
She was
Love
in The
of
Wraith.
the Beast, Blood of the Beast, I think, or something like that.
No, that was a Full Moon movie.
Yes, it was.
Yep. There. When I worked at Full Moon, I didn't work on that movie, but she was in that. What? I can't believe I can't remember the name.
It had two names. And I couldn't find it up until like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then,
By the way, Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, it's said that the face hugger in Alien gives an aspect of the violation that women fear in rape. Oh, it absolutely does. Even if it's not the same, the unwanted conception and violation of your body is similar. The strangling with the tail gives that extra sense of sexual violence. Oh my God. No, Stubble, absolutely. Alien, the face hugger, Alien is all about psychosexual violation. I mean, it is... It is.
Yeah, for men and women. Men and women. Actually.
Yeah, and remember, a woman's never violated the way men are. The face hugger with Cain. Something forcing its thing down your
it's
throat.
a form of sodomy. Yeah, it's like a form of sodomy.
I mean, it's brutal.
And also to animals as well, because I think there's a dog at some point that gets victimized by a facehugger. So
That
it does
was
not
later.
discriminate.
Later,
Yes.
yeah, but again, what's great about the Alien franchise is Geiger's stuff is incredibly, the whole biomechanics and the idea that human sexuality is perverted by these creatures, and and the fact that it uses sexuality as part of procreation and all that. An alien entity using forcible, basically rape, to insert a creature into a man, like impregnate a man, and what happens to poor Kane when the facehugger, it violates every known part of nature, which is what makes it so great. That's why Alien is so horrific. It takes the spin. I mean, if it were to implant or impregnate a woman, which it could have done, it wouldn't have had the same impact. But a man basically is raped and impregnated by an alien. So it's crossing taboos, and yet you never really realize it. You're watching going, oh my God, but there's a statement that's being made in Alien that makes you think about, wow, we should respect them more, because this kind of thing is horrifying.
And I'm sorry, there's another scene, it's not in Aliens, it's in Prometheus film, where, I think it's in Prometheus, where the...
oh no, it is. Yeah.
Where the main, I can't remember what they're called, but the ones who are the original descent...
the engineers.
The engineers, thank you. Where he actually gets sodomized, and it's somewhat more violent and a unique experience in the sense that it's a mutated version, which we already know that happens a lot in that particular genre, but he has this extreme experience, and he's fighting for his life. He's fighting for his life against this thing, and that's perhaps one of the most extreme versions, and maybe one of the best parts of that film, I think.
Well, yeah.
We know what's going to happen.
Well, how about the girl with the dragon tattoo who has sex with her boyfriend who's been infected, and she's had an alien creature deposited in her, and she has it aborted. She goes into it cuts her open, and she has a cesarean, or call it what you want, and it's forcibly removed from her. I mean, not forcibly, but
right.
I mean,
surgically removed.
Yes, I wish that Prometheus was
yeah.
better than it is. Noomi Rapace, I am a huge fan of it. I loved the Swedish girl with the dragon tattoo. Loved her.
But she was wonderful in that, and they make a point in that particular movie of talking about how she, can't have children, and then the irony of this scenario where sex is used to create this. So that also showed us another way that it can literally mimic human sexuality and achieve its goal. Its goal.
Brutal.
Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I did want to, for myself, I did want to suggest though. You said a really good catchphrase, Rob. What we love about Alien. Now, I know a lot of shows what we hate about this and that. And
we don't do that on this channel.
Yeah.
We really talk about what we love.
So maybe we can do like what we love, like for all of October, what we love about, and of course we nitpick here and there, obviously. We could talk about what we love about alien movies or horror movies or something. Just tossing it out there.
I think it's a good idea. Well, Richard, I will let you go. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks,
with
good.
us, Richard. It's nice to see you We see you all the time in the chat and all the things that you do. Oh, you're putting on your. Oh, he's putting them back on.
Yeah. All right. So now we got Darren Seeley's coming on. If he's there. Well, I don't see Darren. Oh wait, there you are.
I see him.
There you go. Okay, we can hear you.
Oh,
all
look,
right.
he has the horror film in the background. The
Lair of the
snake,
White Worm.
the something snake or the worm. Lair of the
White Worm.
I love that one. I love that one where she captures that kid and she's like
it's Ken Russell.
And then there's the scene where there's the giant orifice and she's topless and she's like,
you know what? The way you talk about this, I'm getting so hot right now. Oh my God.
And she's topless and the orifice is enormous.
Hang on,
and
Darren.
She's
hang on.
literally licking this orifice.
Oh my! You know what? I love licking orifices too. I mean, I think that's something we all need to do more of. Just saying.
But it's so big, like it's an exaggerated phallic. I
love this conversation. I can't wait to bring Darren on. Darren, of course, member, moderator. All of them. I
can hear Darren. Can you hear him, Robert?
Yeah, no, I can hear. Maybe a little bit louder if you can goose your sound a little bit more. I'm just going to change your lower third before I bring you on so people know who you are. Wait, what? What? I'm listening to reason, madam. Okay, Darren, I'm bringing you on. I'm putting you in, coach. Welcome, Darren Seeley, to Midnight Metal. First of all, Darren, are you feeling fucking metal, dude? Are you fucking feeling metal?
Close enough.
Come on, man.
Oh.
Can't even play the
Darren,
part.
you have the lair of the white worm behind you. You must be feeling something, Darren. There must be something stirring in there.
Then I just had to go run and get my poster because I thought. But now you guys mentioned the Hellraiser. I wish I would have gotten down now. But Lair of the White Worm will do it for me. Lair of the White Worm always does it for me.
Now, what? Okay, why though? Why does Lair of the White Worm always do it for you, Darren? Come on, tell us. Give us some insight into your little predilections, your peccadillos. What's up? What do you dig about Lair of the White Worm?
I always liked the actress Amanda Donahoe.
Yeah.
When I first saw this image, I thought, okay, I got to check out that movie. And there was some whack stuff. It's more comedy than I thought it would be.
Right.
And I really like the picture. As a person of religious conviction, I had some problems early on with some of the imagery, but I got over it years later because I knew it was just sci-fi horror fantasy. And
hang on, can I stop you right there? Let me ask you. Let me ask you. In all seriousness, and I mean this with all respect. So,
bless you.
Thank you. So you said as a man of religious conviction. Now we're talking about horror, which, by the way, absolutely relies on horror. Doesn't work without religion.
Right.
It doesn't. So much like vampirism, Catholicism, it doesn't work without religion. Now, you said as a man of religious conviction, how does that affect your enjoyment of like genre cinema? Like I ask because I was raised Jewish, but when I saw The Exorcist for the first time, I wished I was Catholic. Because because I knew that if I was Catholic, I would have been The Exorcist is my favorite horror film of all time. But if I was Catholic, it would have affected me even more deeply because the idea of a Catholic priest losing his faith in God, is you don't
true.
You believe in the church, you believe, and here's the thing, like forget. Here's what I don't like about our modern age. I mean, to me, I'm actually a big fan. I shouldn't say fan, but I'm a big. I I find the Catholic Church, the history of the Catholic Church, incredibly interesting from a political standpoint, a spiritual standpoint. Now, yes, the fact that the Catholic Church suppresses human sexuality, that's problematic and has led to a lot of horror. But that's a different situation in terms of their spirituality. Like Damien Karras, the character in The Exorcist, was a good man. And he was a man of God. He loved his mother, but he was racked with guilt. He wasn't there when she died. And to me, one of the great things about The Exorcist is you don't have to be Catholic to understand why it's a great film. So I ask you, since you brought up the fact that you were religious, how does your belief system affect your love of horror and eroticism? How do you reconcile all of that?
It doesn't really, because I know it's fiction and I know what's real. I'm not against storytelling by any means, if that's what you mean.
Well, no, but I mean,
no,
okay, please. I'm sorry.
I feel that are not right because they're just simply there for shock value. And, sometimes, you could tell when to say when, but I had no problem overall with some eroticism in horror movies. It may be the main topic of the horror movie, or it may just be a small scene. As long as it doesn't linger on past a certain point where that's the only thing you're going to show, and it's just hitting you over the head with it. Other than that, I'm fine with it overall, and I just judge a picture by a picture. If I like the film or not, I like the film or not. If I don't like the film or not, it's probably a lot more than do to a sex scene or two.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, so
take for example the remake. Take for example the remake of My Bloody Valentine 3D.
Okay. All right.
Overall, I liked the picture. I thought it was really effective with or without the 3D. But there was a particular scene when the killer goes after this woman, and the scene goes on for a certain amount of time. Of course, the woman is naked. And I felt the scene went on too long. And to the point where I didn't like that film. And there's another reason why I didn't like the film as well. Probably because of the so-called twist reveal. But, to me, I thought that was a little bit going over the top, a little bit much for me. Because it's the kind of thing I don't necessarily like seeing. I think it kind of sometimes some films like that can cross a line where it's abuse against women. What was that film I watched a few years ago? Twisted, I think it was called, about this killer clown.
Yep.
I think it was Twisted. Yeah. And there's a scene where the killer clown, Andy the clown, I think his name was, of course, he's more like a mime. Now, for gorehounds, it's great. I'll say that. For gorehounds, you get your fill. But to me, I felt there was a certain sequence where, what's the point of watching this? I mean, you have him kidnap two girls, and spoilers for those who haven't seen this movie yet. But anyway, one girl he literally saws in half right in front of her friend, and then when he's torturing her friend, she kind of gets away. He stops her and he smacks her around a bit and he shoots her, but he runs out of bullets. And then he goes back into his room while she's frying in her blood and comes back and shoots her again to make sure the deed is done. And I thought that was a little bit much, but
yeah, no, it sounds. I mean,
it got the gore, and of course some guys die off too, so I can't really complain too much. But it seems like it was more geared towards violence against women, and I can't really get into it. And I know they're making a sequel to it now, but
no, but I think that's a very legit. But that's a very legit comment. Yes. I mean, I think that ultimately, misogyny is a very real thing, and I think I think look, I've seen it. There's a lot of men who literally, in Sweden, the original title of the book and the movie of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is Men Who Hate Women. That's
Right.
literally the title of the book. And I think that there is
But that film adaptation, whether it be Sweden or in the English version, is somewhat watchable because Elizabeth's out to get payback.
Yeah, well, and I like
She's more of a vigilante.
I love David Fincher as a filmmaker, and I did not.
Right.
I felt that I love the Swedish version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and I thought the American version is not as good.
No, it's not.
On a number of levels, and I have very specific reasons. And for those people who would say, "Well, what?" I would say
the Swedish version starred Noomi Rapace, right?
Yeah. She's the definitive Elizabeth Salander. I mean, amazing. But the opening scene when they first introduced the guy that's been getting the flowers, the way it's done, the Swedish version is very cinematic, and in the American version, Fincher's version, they have to make sure to tell you exactly what's going on. And so in case you guys didn't get this, let us make sure you understand. And I'm like, that scene with the flowers, for those of you who don't know, in the Swedish version, it's so much better. And you realize that, and I love David Fincher. He's one of my favorite modern filmmakers. I mean, I could watch The Social Network all day, every day. But I was really disappointed with his Girl with the Dragon Tattoo because it's so literal. It's so, we have to make sure you get what's happening all the time. And it's beautifully made, but I just don't think it's as smart as the original Swedish version.
To me, I think his best film still is Seven.
Well, I mean, that's, and I have a connection to that because it was the first screenplay I ever read professionally when I said yes to it. And I read that in 1990, and it took 5 years for it to get made. But yeah, Seven's amazing. But I do think that Fincher's an incredible filmmaker. I mean, Seven was a masterful script that had a director who had something to prove after Alien 3, and it is a masterclass of, it's a perfect storm, and after that, Fincher just never had the scripts to work with. Although I would say The Social Network is one of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Darren, could you please tell us some of your favorite scenes in Lair of the White Worm and why?
Good question.
Mostly it's anything to do with Amanda Donohoe, of course, as I mentioned. And I did like the way they wanted to charm her into getting her out of her house in order to investigate the house and look for ways to defeat her. I thought that was very, very interesting and cool. And I really liked the actors in it, especially young Peter Capaldi.
Yes.
Who's in there. The future Doctor Who. Of course, Hugh Grant's in there, of course, but it's man, the Irish pub song, Irish singers in that. You just got, do a little jig to that, but the bagpipes and everything. But yeah, and of course, I've had that poster for a long time, and I really did enjoy the movie overall. But I don't have any one particular scene, more like a sequence. And of course, I'd be remiss if I'd have to say, I said Amanda Donohoe, so when she's bringing home that delivery boy, I believe it's a delivery boy.
He's a Boy Scout.
Yeah. The Boy Scout earning his merit badge.
I think that's what it is.
Well,
or a Cub Scout or a Ranger.
Badge today, it's seducing the young man and turning him into one of her sex slaves for a little while.
But then that certainly was a very interesting part, and I almost felt sorry for him. I felt very ambivalent for him, but of course I've watched it several times.
Right.
And then someone comes over, and she kind of pushes him under the water, so to speak.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Did you feel sorry for that guy? It's questionable.
Yes, but I love the ambivalent feeling it gives me. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, here's what since we're talking about all this, Lair of the White Worm. You know, Ken Russell had a sort of resurgence in his career. When he was doing in Lair of the White Worm, I think that was a Vestron film, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was. So, a friend of mine, Dan Ireland, who founded the Seattle International Film Festival, became an executive at Vestron, and was instrumental in bringing Ken Russell to Vestron. And Ken Russell
didn't he also do the Rainbow with Vestron?
He might have. I'm not sure. He did other films with Vestron. He did not just Lair of the White Worm, but he did oh God, what's it called? Not the Rainbow. There's one other movie he did.
Or
what?
I believe it's or it was some Crimes of Passion. That's got to be it.
It was hang on a second. Ken Russell Vestron. Hang on. Because let me find out, because there's one thing.
I'm pretty sure he did that film with Enty.
Well, he did Crimes of Passion. He absolutely did that. Yeah.
Right.
But I think that was pre-Vestron.
I think that was New World.
The Rainbow. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the Rainbow. He did that. Which is not what I was thinking of, but yeah, Gothic. That's the other one.
Oh,
that's
I was talking about
movie.
that the other day with a friend.
Yeah, that was what he did. Gothic before.
Haunted house movies in a castle.
Yep.
Okay.
Gothic rules.
Gothic horror movie in a castle. I said, well, you said it right there, Gothic.
He did that before he made Lair of the White Worm. Gothic is amazing.
Right. Julian Sands.
Yep. Natasha Richardson.
Yes.
Fall. Yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel Byrne.
How Percy Shelley.
Yep.
Got Frankenstein and all that stuff, and it's a really interesting movie. Very, very. Gothic.
No, it's great.
It's kind of okay movie, I thought, but it's effective for what it is.
I thought so. I mean, I liked it. I loved Gothic actually when I saw it. Right. But yeah. So anyway, Darren.
Yeah.
Why don't we rotate you out? Bring on someone else.
Rotate me in. Rotate me out.
Darren, it's such a pleasure to have you on and speak to you.
I agree.
Oh, it's a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine.
I love that you brought out the Lair of the White Worm poster. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for doing that.
It's getting late, I know, but if there's someone next in line, rotate.
I don't know if there is. I mean, I just want to give people, I know, right? I mean, I feel bad. Not that you don't do a great job, but I've had 2 moderators on. And it's like, you want to make sure that some, are.
Come on. What's the guy with the tacos? The taco stand guy? What was his name again? Come on board, man. We want some good cheer. Come on board.
I want tacos right now, actually. I want to get into
a car. Me too. I would love some tacos right now. I'm hungry. I didn't have any dinner.
Everybody wants to hear your voice, dude, Dan.
Yeah, and if,
you're there.
And you know what God says? God says, well, if I didn't want you to eat it, I wouldn't have made it look like a taco. Just saying. We're talking about
What do you have on your tacos, by the way?
Terrible joke, but okay.
What do you have on your tacos, by the way? What kind of cheeses? What kind of lettuce?
Oh no, you're making me hungry now, and we can't get tacos because it's
I like. I mean, you can't have too much on a taco. You got to have.
Maybe a breakfast taco.
Yeah, well. All right, gentlemen, ladies, Darren, we will bid you farewell.
Such a pleasure, Darren.
I love the fact you love Lair of the White Worm. Thanks for sharing that with us.
I love a lot of films.
I can't get that image out of my head, Darren.
Well, wait, what? Wait, come back. What have I done? I hit the wrong button. Oh my God, what the hell was that?
Did you get disconnected, Robert?
I didn't.
Okay.
You did, and
I did.
I went and got you back. I'm like, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, it is after 6 a.m. and you do have a show later. I don't know how you feel.
I know.
How you're feeling.
I think perhaps, maybe, we should end the show. It's been a good show.
It has been a good show, and Robert, we will be talking much more about this in the future.
I think you and I talking about sex is one of our favorite things to do.
Yes, it is. It really is.
I know, right? And I have no problem with this. But yeah, I think this is a good show. I mean, if we end it now, I mean, you can get some sleep.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And of course, I do have a show at 11. Let's Get Physical Media with Dieter Bastian. And we have a guest, Bill Hunt from the Digital Bits.
That's wonderful.
And I can show off things that the lovely Emma Bannon got me, like a Space 1999. Wait till you see the vinyl that she got.
She's so generous and such a lovely woman.
Oh, I love Emma Bannon's the best. The thing is, you know what? I actually dream of going to London and partying with her. Like, I think to be honest, I think Emma Bannon and I, and all of us who, I think she and I could probably like party for 48 hours straight, and we'll wind up sleeping in some weird place. We'll wake up and go, where are we? Like, here's my fantasy about Emma Bannon. Like, we both wake up in some weird like back room of some theater where we are in the middle of some production of something that we're, and we wind up in where the set dressing is, and we both, who knows how we got there, and she'll look at me and I'll look at her and we'll like, where are we? And I'm like, I don't know, Emma. And she'll look at me, Emma will be like, but does it really matter? And I'll say, no, Emma, it doesn't. She's like, let's go get breakfast. And we'll both leave, and we won't even know where we are. We'll be somewhere in London, and we'll walk out, and Emma's like, oh no, I know where we are.
Of course, because she's got this. She's got it.
She's got it dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I dream. If only I could go see No Time to Die in Britain.
Wow, that would be nice.
I did for Skyfall.
I
know.
Robert, it's been such a pleasure talking with you tonight.
Oh, what a great show. It's always a pleasure. This was so good. And thank you. By the way, it was your idea, this topic.
It was my idea. Yes, it was.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we do have Justin Bass, or Bass, says, how are you? I just want to give you some love. Well, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Justin then goes, he says, Rob, seriously, where's the ladies' man, the Tim Meadows sticker? Wow, Justin, is there a ladies' man sticker? A third tier Saturday Night Live movie? Okay, I'm with you. All right, I like that sketch. The movie not so good, but I would say, Justin, aren't you the ladies' man?
Hi, Justin.
Come on now. All right. So let's put a cork in it, or whatever, in the end of this episode 45 of Midnight Metal.
Yes.
I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for just being who you are.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Well, I want to thank our moderating staff. I mean, we got some. I mean, you're part of the moderating staff, but Darren's moderating, the Richard's moderating, Bunyan Snipe, all the way from the UK, moderating. Thank you for being here. I think those are our 3 moderators.
I wasn't sure if Justin was there, but I could be wrong. Justin Toner, I thought I saw his name.
I don't know. I'm looking. Wait. Yeah. Hang on. Simon Gilmore was here.
Yes.
Los Bros Gilmores.
Yes.
By the way, I think about them all the time. They lost their father recently, so.
Yes, and I'm going to be in. I'm planning on interviewing both of them for PGS All Stars very soon, and we will be talking about their father in the interview.
Yes, and the Los Bros Gilmore, they're great guys, and they're foundational members of this community. So.
Yes.
Well, on that note, my dear.
Yes.
Why don't we say, me, Robert Meyer Burnett? We always say on this channel, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, am I full of shit or do I believe it? What do you think?
We believe it and we practice it.
God damn it, we do. Thank you for saying so, because a lot of people are like, oh, Rob, you just said. No, the whole point, we have people come on, we foster discussion. Mm-hmm. All right, I will bid you a farewell, a good evening, pleasant dreams, all of those things. Please say hello to your mother for me.
I certainly will.
That's what Mark Wahlberg would tell me to say. So, the end of Midnight Metal, episode 45. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel via Super Chats and tips and memberships and all that. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Videos with the Post-Geek Singularity, PGS All-Stars. There's a lot of those. There's more episodes of Mr. Foley and Scotty Richardson's Set to Stun are coming. And apparently Alex Montano and Roberto Suarez is an all-Spanish show. The Latinx Force is coming to this channel. So, a lot of good stuff happening. Mm-hmm. And on that note, kids, as the prisoner would say, be seeing you. Or wait, I had a great... I fucked it up. Technically, now we're gone. So there we go, my dear. We are off this channel. People can still hear me talking to you, but they can't hear you. Oh, wait. And now...